Chapter 2439. Who stole it from you? It was obviously you who lusted after me and tried to seduce me with this origin source. After being rejected, you flew into a rage out of humiliation and tried to force yourself on me. Fortunately, I was prepared, otherwise, you would have succeeded. Yu Ying cried out in grievance. As she spoke, she tightened her clothes, as if Guan Qi had really done something to her. Guan Qi stared at Yu Ying and said in disbelief, "Woman, do you have any shame?" Yu Ying's pretty face sank and became extremely gloomy as she shouted, "You dare call me shameless?" Guan Qi retorted angrily, "I was the one who discovered this origin source first. It's fine if you want to steal it, but why do you have to accuse me?" The two suddenly quarreled endlessly, both saying that they discovered the origin source first and that the other wanted to snatch it. Both of them had their own version of events and had no evidence, so there was no way to prove that what they said was true. Yang Kai stood on the side with an indifferent expression while sneering in his heart. If his guess was right, the origin source here should have been discovered by Guan Qi first, and Yu Ying was here to snatch it. The reason was very simple. Since Guan Qi could come to the Shattered Star Sea, it meant that his aptitude was very good in the Seeking Passion sect and he could be considered an elite disciple. Since he was an elite, he must have cultivated the Seeking Passion Supreme technique. The Seeking Passion sect's cultivation method required one to enter the Tao through emotions. Although it made the elite disciples somewhat promiscuous and each of them had countless wives and concubines, it was precisely because of the characteristics of the Seeking Passion Supreme technique that they would never use force on a woman. When they wanted to obtain a woman, they would inevitably make themselves fall in love with her. Yu Ying's claim that Guan Qi was lustful was clearly nonsense. If Yang Kai hadn't dealt with the Seeking Passion sect's people in the Northern Territory, he wouldn't have known about this. But then again, these two were not good people. It was just a dog-eat-dog situation. The two quarreled for a while before Yu Ying suddenly shook Yang Kai's arm and said in a coquettish voice, "Brother Feng, this person is bullying me. You have to uphold justice for me." Looking at her appearance, she really wanted to borrow Yang Kai's strength to intimidate others. Yang Kai didn't want to continue watching the show. He coldly snorted and looked at Guan Qi. "Brat, you've offended junior sister Yu. We can't just let this go." Guan Qi gritted his teeth and glared at Yang Kai. "What do you want? I have no enmity with you in the past. Friend, don't go too far." His appearance was neither servile nor overbearing, which made Kai Yang somewhat surprised. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai sneered, "Fortunately, junior sister Yu isn't injured. Otherwise, this phone will take your life." Hearing this, Guan Qi relaxed. Listening to Yang Kai's words, it seemed that he did not intend to make things too difficult for him. This made him extremely surprised in his heart. He did not know what Yang Kai was up to in this damned place. If he, a third-order Tao Source Realm cultivator, really wanted to kill him, he definitely wouldn't have the strength to fight back, and when the time came, he would have died in vain. "Who says I'm not injured? My heart is aching. If you don't believe me, brother, feel it," Yu Ying coquettishly said from the side. As she spoke, she pushed her chest in front of Yang Kai, as if she was ready for him to do whatever he wanted. Yang Kai's face darkened. "There are outsiders here," Yu Ying giggled and said, "Brother Feng, you're really interesting." She thought that Yang Kai was thin-skinned and would be too embarrassed to have any excessive contact with her in front of others. Yang Kai immediately changed the topic. He looked at Guan Qi and shouted, "How about this? Leave something behind and I'll let you go." "What?" Guan Qi's expression changed as he asked in surprise. If Yang Kai's request wasn't too excessive, he might agree. However, if it was too excessive, he would definitely not let Yang Kai get what he wanted even if he had to fight to the death. "Leave your space ring as compensation for my junior sister Yu," Yang Kai said coldly. Yu Ying was originally a little unhappy because Yang Kai said he would let Guan Qi go, but when she heard this, she immediately smiled and looked towards Yang Kai gratefully. Guan Qi was silent for a moment, seemingly knowing that he was now a fish on a chopping board and could not resist, so he could only reluctantly take off the space ring on his hand and toss it to Yang Kai. Yang Kai caught it and swept it with his divine sense. After confirming that there was nothing particularly important inside, he handed it back to Yu Ying. Can this Guan leave now? Guan Qi asked worriedly. Scram! Yang Kai shouted. Guan Qi glared hatefully at Yang Kai and Yu Ying, as if he wanted to imprint the appearance and brand of this adulterous pair into the depths of his mind. Suddenly, he urged his secret technique and fled at an extremely fast speed. Brother Feng, if you act now, you will definitely be able to catch him off guard. Yu Ying suddenly whispered into Yang Kai's ear while secretly circulating her source qi, seemingly preparing to act at a moment's notice. This woman is really vicious. Yang Kai was secretly shocked. Even now, she still did not intend to let Guan Qi go and insisted on taking his life. If it weren't for her lack of confidence, she would have already taken action. If she wanted to kill Guan Qi, she would have to rely on Yang Kai's strength. However, to her disappointment, even after Guan Qi had disappeared, Yang Kai still had no intention of taking action. This made her feel a little dissatisfied, causing her brow to furrow slightly as she secretly felt that this brother Fengde was a little too soft-hearted. Guan Qi had a 5-point star seal in his hand. If she could kill him and snatch his star seal, her own star seal could be upgraded. Having missed such a great opportunity, Yu Ying's joy of obtaining Guan Qi's space ring was greatly diluted. Seeking passion sect's people are not to be trifled with. He may have some trump cards up his sleeve. If we force him into a corner and force him to use his trump card, we may not be able to escape unscathed, Yang Kai explained lightly. In fact, he just didn't want to be used by Yu Ying. If he had encountered Guan Qi alone, perhaps the result would have been different. That's right. Yu Ying nodded in agreement and smiled. Brother Feng, you are indeed thoughtful. After a pause, she said, Brother Feng, this ring. Although Yang Kai had just mentioned that this ring was to compensate her for her loss, this ring was snatched by Yang Kai after all. At this time, she had to ask Yang Kai's opinion. Junior sister, just put it away. Consider it a gift from me to you. Yang Kai smiled slightly. Yu Ying was overjoyed and quickly put away the ring while saying, Brother Feng, you are so kind. Yang Kai smiled and said, Brother, you are just borrowing my flower to present Buddha, don't mind it. Suddenly, he changed the topic and said, By the way, I haven't seen Brother Yin for several years. Why don't we go find him now? Deep in his heart, he couldn't wait to find Yin Lesheng and ask him about Xiao Xiao's whereabouts. If it weren't for this reason, he wouldn't have deliberately tried to please Yu Ying and endured her temper. Finding Brother Yin is not that simple. Although our Netherworld sect's disciples have all cultivated a set of secret techniques before coming here and can sense each other from very far away, in this vast shattered star sea, we may not be able to see each other until it closes. However, Brother Feng can rest assured that even if we can't find Brother Yin here, when you come to my Netherworld sect in the future, you only need to mention Junior Sister's name and Junior Sister will definitely welcome you in. Yang Kai's heart sank when he heard this. If they couldn't find Yin Lesheng, what was he doing with Yu Ying? Yu Ying said again, but it's not like we don't have a chance. This is still the periphery of the shattered star sea. Brother Yin and the others must be going inside, so we just need to go deeper and have a chance to sense their location. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go now. Yang Kai hurriedly said. Yu Ying glanced at him and said, Oh, Brother Feng, you are really impatient. Finding Brother Yin is important, but we can't miss the source qi here. Yang Kai patted his head and said, Right, I almost forgot. Thanks to Junior Sister Yu for reminding me. Yu Ying pursed her lips and smiled tenderly. Brother Feng is really cute. Yang Kai said, How about this? You and I will find a place to refine the source qi here. After we're done, we'll go find Brother Yin. Okay. At that moment, the two split up and each found a safe place to sit cross-legged and refine the source qi. The source qi here was quite good. If it were two ordinary Dao Source Realm Masters refining it, it would take at least a month to completely absorb it. If it was only one person, it would take 2 months. This was why the Shattered Star Sea lasted for a long time every time it opened. Because refining source qi was too time-consuming, and if the duration was too short, the people who came in basically wouldn't be able to get any benefits. Yang Kai was anxious to find Yin Lesheng, so he directly urged the star refining art. In an instant, The source chi on this meteorite gathered towards him continuously, turning into specks of starlight around his body and merging into his body through his limbs and bones. In just 2 days, the origin energy on the meteorite had been completely refined. And this was the result of Yang Kai restraining himself. If he had gone all out, it would have taken him less than half a day to absorb all the source chi. 90% of the source chi here had been refined by Yang Kai, so Yu Ying naturally obtained very little. 2 days later, when the two met again, Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with a strange expression and asked, "Brother Feng, why is the source chi here gone so quickly?" "I don't know." Yang Kai pretended to be stupid. In any case, Yu Ying didn't see him circulating the star refining art. Yu Ying said, "I could feel that the source chi was converging towards Brother Feng's location. Brother, your refining speed is much faster than mine." Speaking of this, she seemed to think of something and her expression changed as she whispered, "Brother Feng, are you also a star master?" Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, but he nodded and said, "Yes, I am also a star master in the territory of the Great Desolate Star." When Yu Ying heard this, she couldn't help but cover her red lips with her small hand as she looked at Yang Kai with excitement, as if she had seen a treasure that would make her heart pound. She whispered, "Senior Brother Feng is also a star master?" Chapter 2440. Yu Ying's surprised look made Yang Kai feel very strange. "What's wrong with that?" Yu Ying said excitedly, "I heard that a star master cultivator has great convenience in this shattered star sea, and the speed at which they can refine source strength is far faster than ordinary people. I thought it was just a rumor, but now it seems that it is true. The speed at which they can refine source strength is much faster than the legend." Yang Kai asked curiously, "Does a star master have such convenience?" "Brother Feng, you didn't know?" Yang Kai shook his head and said, "Since I came here, I have been refining the source strength of stars like this. I thought it was the same for everyone." "How could it be the same?" Yu Ying cried. "If this junior sister were to refine the source strength here, it would take at least 2 months. So long." Yang Kai looked surprised. Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with scorching eyes and said, "Brother Feng, do you know how powerful you are? It seems that Brother Yin should be the same." Yang Kai nodded and said, "Brother Yin is stronger than me, so naturally he is more powerful." Saying so, Yang Kai sneered in his heart. Although Yin Lesheng was also a star master, and perhaps had some special conveniences, without the star refining art, it was impossible for him to refine source strength so quickly. At most, he would be a little faster than others. The star refining art was the biggest convenience in the shattered star sea. Brother Feng really has a promising future. Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with a fiery gaze. Although she knew that Yang Kai, like Yin Lesheng, had come from the territory of the Great Desolate Star, his aptitude was definitely not bad. He would have great achievements in the future, but now that she learned that he was a star master, Yu Ying immediately understood that this Feng De in front of her was the second Yin Lesheng. If such a person was recruited into the Netherworld sect by her, her status would also rise, and she would definitely be greatly appreciated by the higher-ups of the sect. When this Brother Feng reached a certain level of cultivation in the future, who would dare to provoke him? In a split second, Yu Ying made a decision. She secretly made up her mind that she must find an opportunity to capture this Brother Feng's body and mind and make him work for her. "Junior sister Yu is overpraising me. Since the source here is gone, let's set off." Yang Kai was still worried about Yin Lesheng, so how could he have the time to chat with her? Yu Ying nodded and said, "All right." As she spoke, she suddenly threw out her hand. A small flying shuttle artifact appeared in front of Yang Kai. This artifact looked extremely exquisite, and the energy fluctuations it gave off weren't weak either. It was actually a Dao Source grade high-rank flying artifact, the same grade as Yang Kai's wooden boat. Yang Kai was secretly shocked. He thought to himself, as expected of an elite disciple from a large sect. Yu Ying, a second-order Dao Source realm cultivator, was actually able to take out such a treasure so casually. It was obviously not common. "Brother Feng, do you want to come in too?" Yu Ying threw a coquettish glance at Yang Kai, showing a shy look at the right time as she whispered, "The road to the star is long. If we go together, we won't be lonely." Yang Kai's scalp went numb and he shuddered. He didn't want to be in the same room with this woman, but it would be inappropriate to refuse at this time, so after pondering for a moment, he could only bite the bullet and say, that would be for the best. Yu Ying smiled and said, Brother Feng, please come in. Saying so, she opened the door of the flying shuttle. The two entered one by one. After entering, Yang Kai discovered that the flying shuttle was quite spacious. The space inside this flying shuttle artifact wasn't too big. In addition to the control room, there was only one bedroom, but the interior had been decorated extremely luxuriously by Yu Ying. As soon as Yang Kai stepped inside, an extravagant fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. He didn't know how many people this woman had invited into this flying shuttle, but in any case, Yang Kai didn't like such an environment. Yu Ying had a shy look on her face, and her eyes were full of desire, as if she was looking forward to something good. Yang Kai didn't wait for her to say anything and said, Junior sister Yu, I have been fighting a lot of people recently and have consumed a lot of my strength, so I need to borrow junior sister's secret room to recover for a while. I will come back in a few days to replace you. After saying so, Yang Kai immediately walked into the only bedroom, closed the door, and sat down cross-legged. Yu Ying stood there in a daze, not knowing what to think. After a long time, she snorted and turned to control the flying shuttle. In the following days, Yang Kai could be said to be cautious and extremely difficult. Yu Ying always thought of ways to tease him, harass him, and annoy him. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to use Yu Ying's power to find Yin Lesheng, he would have already slapped this shameless woman to death. Anyway, judging from their previous interactions, this Yu Ying wasn't a good person. Yang Kai spent most of his time in seclusion in the secret room, and except for when he and Yu Ying took turns controlling the flying shuttle, Yu Ying couldn't find an opportunity to do anything too excessive to him. Along the way, they would occasionally find some shattered stars or meteorites containing source strength, so the two naturally wouldn't miss them. Every time he refined source strength, Yang Kai always operated the star refining art with all his strength, causing Yu Ying to get little benefit. Because of this, Yu Ying couldn't help but have some opinions about Yang Kai. She always felt that this man wasn't generous enough. Whenever he encountered something good, he would grab it clean, not wanting to leave anything for her. However, Yu Ying didn't dare to give Yang Kai any face. First, Yang Kai's cultivation was higher than hers, and second, she was looking forward to introducing Yang Kai to her Netherworld sect in the future so that she could obtain Yang Kai's care and protection. Therefore, although she was extremely dissatisfied in her heart, she didn't say anything in front of Yang Kai, only cursing him in private. What she didn't know was that although Yang Kai was in seclusion, his divine sense had always been paying attention to her movements, so he knew her situation like the back of his hand and increasingly understood this woman's evil nature. On this day, while Yang Kai was in seclusion, he suddenly opened his eyes as he sensed some star seal fluctuations rapidly approaching. The presence of star seal fluctuations meant that a cultivator was approaching, but he didn't know the specific number because he could only sense the existence of a cultivator whose star seal was lower than his. If the star seal was the same or higher than his, he couldn't sense it. After thinking about it, Yang Kai sent Yu Ying a secret sound transmission, Junior sister Yu, someone is approaching. Yu Ying was bored as she controlled the flying shuttle forward, but when she heard this, she immediately asked in surprise, where? How many people are there? Looking at her ignorant appearance, it was obvious that she didn't notice anything, which meant that the star seal level of the approaching people should be the same as hers, 5-point star seals, so she couldn't sense it. To the east, I don't know how many people there are, but there are at least 3. Because Yang Kai could only sense the fluctuations of 3 star seals, he was certain that there were 3 people. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment before continuing. The other party's speed has increased, so they should be coming for us. Yu Ying was shocked when she heard this, and just as she was about to speed up and leave this place, a flash of light appeared in her field of vision. The flash of light was like lightning, rushing to a place not far from the flying shuttle in a very short time and stopping quietly. Immediately afterward, 5 figures suddenly appeared there. Yang Kai was secretly taken aback because he could only sense the fluctuations of 3 star seals, but now 5 people had appeared. In other words, 2 of them had at least 6-point star seals. After seeing the 5 people, Yu Ying's pretty face suddenly turned pale and she gulped nervously, seemingly very afraid of them. At this time, it was too late to run away. If she acted rashly, it might cause a chain reaction. Moreover, looking at the posture of the 5 people, it seemed that they were targeting them. She didn't know whether this was a blessing or a curse. For a moment, Yu Ying felt uneasy. Who are these people? Yang Kai suddenly appeared beside her and asked. Yu Ying's pretty face turned slightly pale as she replied, they are people from Brahma Holy Land. Brahma Holy Land is also a great sect in the Eastern Territory, and its strength and status are on par with our sect. Yang Kai asked, is the relationship between your 2 sects not very good? Yu Ying replied with a wry smile, it's not that bad. Anyway, there is some friction between the disciples of every great sect. Yang Kai nodded lightly and pointed to 2 of them, those 2 should be very powerful. Yu Ying glanced at him in surprise and said, those 2 are holy sons of Brahma Holy Land. Naturally, they are extremely powerful. In our sect, only a few brothers can compete with them. Holy sons. Yang Kai raised his brow. I don't know what they are doing here. Brother Feng, don't say anything, I will deal with them. Yu Ying said with some unease. She was afraid that Yang Kai would offend them. If that happened, it would really be difficult for them to escape this time. Got it, Yang Kai nodded. At this moment, one of the 5 people on the opposite side suddenly shouted, you inside, get out. Yu Ying's mouth was stuffed with bitterness, and although she was unwilling, she had no choice but to open the door of the shuttle and walk out. Yang Kai followed closely behind. At this time, it was meaningless to hide. The other party's divine sense was constantly sweeping this place, so they must have already discovered him. After walking out of the shuttle, Yu Ying politely cupped her fists and said softly, Yu Ying greets brothers Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian. The 2 people named Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian should be the 2 holy sons of Brahma Holy Land. They were also the people Yu Ying was afraid of. Both of them were peak Dao Source Realm cultivators and looked extremely powerful. As for the remaining 3, they were only second-order Dao Source Realm cultivators, so Yu Ying was not too afraid of them. Zhong Hao, who had a rough appearance, narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Yu Ying. I was wondering who it was, so it was you. There was no trace of politeness in his words, calling Yu Ying by her name in front of her face. Obviously, he knew how fickle Yu Ying was. After all, they were all disciples of the top sects in the Eastern Territory, so they had some understanding of each other. Yu Ying's licentious behavior was extremely famous in the entire Eastern Territory. Zhong Xian, on the other hand, stared at Yang Kai meaningfully and said sarcastically, how long has it been since we last met? Yu Ying, you are really an eye-opener. Chapter 2441. Yu Ying bit her red lips and said pitifully, brothers, why are you being so sarcastic as soon as we meet? What has this junior sister done to offend you? There's nothing going on between me and this senior martial brother Feng. You 2 senior martial brothers shouldn't ruin my reputation. While speaking, she glanced at Yang Kai with some worry, as if she was afraid that he would know about her past. Nothing to do with you. Zhong Xian's eyes bulged as he froze on the spot. The other 4 people from Brahma Holy Land also looked as if they had seen a ghost. After a while, the 5 of them suddenly burst into laughter. Their laughter was arrogant, unbridled, and full of ridicule. Suddenly, the laughter stopped and Zhong Hao said with a cold face, this is the funniest joke I have ever heard. Zhong Xian also said, a man who can share a room with you, Yu Ying, and yet remain pure and innocent, I'm afraid he hasn't been born yet, right? Yu Ying's face turned green and red. Even if she was lascivious by nature, being spoken to like this in front of others, she still felt a little embarrassed. She glanced at Yang Kai and explained, Brother Feng, don't listen to their nonsense, this junior sister is not that kind of person. Yang Kai nodded and said, I know. He sneered in his heart. He had already figured out what kind of nature this woman had, yet at this time, she still pretended to be innocent and tried to explain this to him. He didn't know what she was thinking. Seeing Yang Kai's indifferent attitude, Yu Ying was a little annoyed and secretly blamed these people from Brahma Holy Land for meddling in other people's business, but now that her strength was inferior to theirs, she didn't dare to get angry. She could only look at them pitifully and say, brothers, did you deliberately stop junior sister to humiliate her? If that is the case, then you have succeeded. Junior sister, farewell. Want to leave? Did you ask me? Zhong Hao shouted. What do you brothers want to do? Yu Ying's heart was beating like a drum. Zhong Hao and this group of people obviously didn't come here to chat. Zhongxian looked at Yu Ying coldly and snorted, cheap maid, let me ask you, where is my junior brother Deng Yong now? Yu Ying's expression changed slightly when she heard this. However, he quickly hid it and said with a forced smile, Brother Zhongxian's question is strange. Don't you know where Deng Yong is? Why did he ask junior sister? I've never seen him before. You still dare to lie. Zhong Hao's eyes flashed coldly as he shouted, Junior brother Deng Yong clearly died at your hands. Yu Ying said in fear, Brother Zhong Hao, why would you think that? Deng Yong and I have no enmity in the past. Even if I really met him, I wouldn't kill him. What's more, Deng Yong's strength is higher than mine. Even if junior sister has the heart, she is powerless. Brother Zhong Hao, please don't slander me. You still want to quibble. Zhong Hao gritted his teeth. He glared at Yu Ying with fiery eyes and snorted coldly, since you're so stubborn, then I'll let you die with a clear understanding. Junior brother Deng Yong's soul-dispersing seal is clearly imprinted on your body. We also sensed the soul-dispersing seal and followed you here. Now, what else do you have to say? Yu Ying's face suddenly paled. Zhongxian said, originally, we were wondering who killed Deng Yong. But we didn't expect it to be you, a lowly slave. Deng Yong was stronger than you. It's not surprising that he died at your hands. After all, he was a lecher. Zhong Hao continued, although Deng Yong was obsessed and deserved to die, he was still a Holy Land's disciple. Yu Ying, a life for a life, take your own life. The two of them spoke one after another, directly announcing the date of Yu Ying's death. Yu Ying's beautiful face was already pale, and her delicate body was trembling. At this time, Yang Kai had noticed a very hidden soul brand on her body, presumably left behind by Deng Yong before he died. It was ridiculous that Yu Ying hadn't noticed it until now, leading to her being caught red-handed by the people from Brahma Holy Land. Now, she couldn't defend herself even if she wanted to. Yang Kai had been wondering why the 5 people from Brahma Holy Land had come straight to block his and Yu Ying's path, but now it seemed that it was the soul-dispersing seal. He didn't know when Yu Ying killed Deng Yong, but it must have been done within the past year. Yang Kai was secretly annoyed. He followed Yu Ying because he wanted her to take him to find Yin Lisheng, but he didn't expect such a thing to happen halfway. He couldn't just ignore it. If he ignored it, Yu Ying would die, and all his efforts would go down the drain. So whether he was willing or not, he had to save Yu Ying. Why haven't you done it yet? Zhong Hao saw Yu Ying still not committing suicide and couldn't help but shout, think about it clearly, if we do, you won't be able to die even if you want to. Yu Ying's face turned even paler. Gritting her teeth, she took a step back and shouted, this is my sect's brother Fengde, if you have anything to say it to him. This woman, as soon as she saw that the situation wasn't looking good, had directly pushed Yang Kai out, clearly intending to use him as a shield, not even bothering to hide her intentions. Fengde. Zhong Hao narrowed his eyes and glanced at Yang Kai indifferently. Where did this trash come from? I've never heard of him. In the entire Netherworld sect, the Dao Source Realm Masters who could compete with the Holy Sons were all famous, so he had never heard of this Fengde. Since he had never heard of him, it meant that he was just an ordinary disciple, and ordinary disciples were not enough in front of the 2 Holy Sons. Little brat, you want to stand up for that cheap slut? Think about it clearly. Zhongxian looked at Yang Kai and sneered. Yang Kai's face was sullen, and he took advantage of the situation to vent his anger. Since junior sister you calls me brother, this Feng naturally can't just sit back and watch. If you want to kill her, you'll have to go through this Feng first. Yu Ying, who was hiding behind him, heard this and her beautiful eyes lit up. She did not expect that Yang Kai would have such backbone and responsibility. After all, he was not a disciple of the Netherworld sect at all, and she had just met him by chance. Even if he wanted to escape at this time, it would be understandable, but he did not do so. This guy is really stupid, Yu Ying thought to herself. But if Fengde was involved for a while, she might be able to take the opportunity to escape. As for whether Fengde lived or died, she did not care. Her own life was the most important thing. It's a pity. I was hoping to introduce him to the Netherworld sect, but he doesn't have this blessing at all. Yu Ying secretly made plans in her heart, and at the same time, she was ready to escape at any time. Although her posture was very hidden, how could it escape Yang Kai's observation? He sneered in his heart. Yu Ying, this woman was really insidious and vicious. If he was really Fengde, he would have been sold by her. Unfortunately, she had her own schemes, but so did he. Good, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Zhong Hao had a rough appearance and a fiery temper. Undoubtedly, he had been successfully angered by Yang Kai. As he spoke, he flipped his hand and a sledgehammer suddenly appeared in his palm. The sledgehammer was pulsing with energy, exuding a fierce aura. Zhong Hao raised the sledgehammer high and smashed it in the direction of Yang Kai and Yu Ying. In an instant, the surrounding space froze, as if the void was about to collapse. A huge hammer shadow suddenly appeared and covered a large area, enveloping Yang Kai and Yu Ying. Although this move was powerful, Yang Kai really didn't put it in his eyes. If he wanted to, he could even kill these 5 from Brahma Holy Land. However, he did not want to expose his heaven-defying strength, especially in front of Yu Ying. So, he pretended that his expression changed greatly, but he did not use any secret techniques or artifacts. He just waved his fists, and in an instant, fist shadows filled the sky as he madly rushed towards the hammer shadow. Asterisk hong hong hong. Asterisk the void trembled as a fierce battle broke out. Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced back 10 meters, looking like he was about to collapse. Taking advantage of this retreat, Yang Kai's figure leapt and fled into the depths of the void without looking back. Before leaving, he didn't forget to shout, "Junior sister Yu, run quickly." At this time, Yu Ying had already used a secret technique and turned into a wisp of blue smoke, escaping into the distance like a gust of wind. Looking at her appearance, it seemed that she had run away the moment Yang Kai and Zhong Hao started fighting. She had no intention of helping Yang Kai at all. Hearing Yang Kai's shout, she hurriedly said, "Brother Feng, you should also follow. If you are caught, you will die." Her escape secret technique was very strange. It seemed to burn her source chi, and although the consumption was terrifying, her speed was extremely fast. Yang Kai saw this and hurriedly bit the tip of his tongue, spitting out a mouthful of blood essence and burning it. Only then did he manage to catch up with Yu Ying's speed. Zhong Hao and the others were left standing in place, dumbfounded. Just now, Yang Kai had displayed a brave and fearless attitude, so they thought they had encountered a tough nut to crack, but unexpectedly, after just one exchange, Yang Kai had been shaken by Zhong Hao to the point of spitting blood. Now, he was even burning his blood essence to escape. "This guy is also an embroidered pillow," Zhong Xian said with a mocking expression. Fortunately he ran quickly, otherwise he would have died without a burial place, Zhong Hao said unhappily, putting away his giant hammer artifact and waving his hand. "Chase, no matter what, we must kill them and avenge junior brother Deng Yong." The others nodded and followed closely behind the 2 holy sons, Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian, in hot pursuit. Although Yu Ying and that guy called Fengde had used a secret technique and burned their blood essence to run very fast, whether it was using a secret technique or burning their blood essence, they couldn't maintain it for too long. Once the time limit was up, they would definitely weaken. When that time came, it would be even easier to kill them. On the other side, Yang Kai and Yu Ying, who were flying through the void, didn't dare to look back. Yang Kai seemed to be in a difficult position burning his blood essence, but in fact, everything was under his control. That bit of blood essence was nothing to him. After flying for a while, Yang Kai shouted, "Junior sister Yu, you have a scattered soul seal on your body. Quickly find a way to get rid of it, otherwise we won't be able to escape." This woman was really stupid. The 2 holy sons had mentioned this before, but even now, she still hadn't thought of getting rid of the seal. If it weren't for him being involved, Yang Kai wouldn't have bothered to remind her. Chapter 2442. After being reminded by Yang Kai, Yu Ying felt as if she had just woken up from a dream. She quickly began to undress, stripping herself naked in just a moment, leaving only a set of close-fitting clothes on her body. Unfortunately, those clothes were also as thin as a cicada's wings and were almost transparent. Yang Kai's face was filled with black lines and he couldn't help asking, "Junior sister Yu, what are you doing?" Yu Ying said, "I can't sense where the seal is at all. I hope it's on my clothes." Yang Kai was speechless. "It's on your shoulder, focus your divine sense and sense it." This scattered soul seal was indeed well hidden. If it weren't for Yang Kai's extraordinary spiritual energy, he likely wouldn't have been able to detect it so easily. Now that Yang Kai had instructed her, Yu Ying quickly gathered her divine sense and probed her shoulder. A moment later, her face lit up with joy. Apparently, she had found something. Yang Kai didn't know what kind of secret technique she had used, but as the two of them fled, Yang Kai could feel the scattered soul seal slowly fade away before finally disappearing. It wasn't until this time that Yu Ying breathed a sigh of relief and took out a new set of clothes from her space ring. Now that the scattered soul seal was gone, as long as the two of them ran a little faster and got rid of the people from Brahma Holy Land behind them, they would be safe. After calming down, Yu Ying said, "I must thank Brother Feng for what happened just now." Yang Kai said indifferently, "You're welcome." Seemingly feeling his indifference, Yu Ying couldn't help feeling a little sad. She wondered if this Brother Feng would vent his anger on her because of what happened just now. After all, what she had just done was indeed a bit too much. If it were anyone else, they would be angry. After running like this for another half an hour, Yu Ying's face was pale. She was out of breath. Although her secret technique was easy to use, the consumption was not small. It was not easy for her to persist until now. Seeing her slow down, Yang Kai summoned his wooden boat and said, "Come on, I'll take you with me." Yu Ying nodded after hearing this. He directly jumped onto the wooden boat and sat down cross-legged. While stuffing recovery spirit pills into his mouth, he took out a communication artifact and constantly sent messages into it. It seemed that he wanted to contact the disciples of the Netherworld sect. Seeing her like this, Yang Kai secretly looked forward to Yu Ying contacting Yin Lisheng. The people of Brahma Holy Land seemed to have been left behind. Yang Kai released his divine sense. He didn't sense their auras either. One day later, Yu Ying's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up as she exclaimed in a low voice, "Brother Feng, I've found someone from my sect." Yang Kai was overjoyed. "Who?" Yu Ying said, "It's Brother Zhong Zhenyong. I don't know if you've heard of him before." It wasn't Yin Lisheng. Yang Kai could not help but feel a little disappointed. But he still replied, "I don't know much about the situation in your Eastern Territory, and I've never been to the Eastern Territory, so I haven't heard of Brother Zhong's name." Yu Ying smiled and said, "Brother Zhong is ranked in the top 3 of the Tao Source realm in my sect. With his protection, we don't have to be afraid of the people of Brahma Holy Land. Let's go find him now." "Good, point the way." Yang Kai nodded. Although Yu Ying didn't contact Yin Lisheng, Yang Kai felt that it was not impossible to inquire about Yin Lisheng from Zhong Zhenyong. Maybe this Zhong Zhenyong knew something. Immediately, under Yu Ying's instructions, Yang Kai changed direction and rushed towards a certain place. An hour later, a figure standing in the void entered Yang Kai's eyes. Yang Kai controlled the wooden boat to fly in front of this person, but before he could stop, Yu Ying rushed over and shouted, "Brother Zhong, Junior Sister Yu." Zhong Zhenyong smiled at Yu Ying, raised his eyes, and glanced at Yang Kai lightly. "Is this the Brother Feng you mentioned, Junior Sister Yu?" He knew the surname of Yang Kai's impersonator, so it seemed that Yu Ying had already told him about Yang Kai before coming here. Yu Ying nodded and said, "Yes, Brother Zhong, Junior Sister was able to arrive here safely thanks to Brother Feng's blessing." Zhong Zhenyong was handsome and had an amiable demeanor. He didn't put on too much airs. Hearing this, he swept his eyes over Yang Kai and said, "I heard Junior Sister you say that you and Junior Brother Yin came from the territory of Great Desolate Star, and you are a Star Master?" Yang Kai cupped his fists politely and said, "This Feng indeed came from the territory of Great Desolate Star like Brother Yin and is also a Star Master. I haven't seen Brother Yin for many years and have missed you greatly, so I took the liberty to come here with Junior Sister Yu. I hope Brother Zhong can forgive me." Zhong Zhenyong laughed and said, "It's fine, since you intend to join our Netherworld sect, You may become brother and junior brother in the future, so there is no need to be so polite. Yu Ying said, Brother Zhong, this is not the place to talk. Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian of Brahma Holy Land were chasing after me and Brother Feng. I don't know if they are still chasing after us. Let's talk as we walk. Zhong Hao, Zhong Xian. Zhong Zhenyong's eyes turned cold when he heard this, and he said coldly, They dare to chase after you. What do they want? Yu Ying said embarrassedly, Junior sister accidentally killed Deng Yong. Zhong Zhenyong looked at her angrily and said, He died of yang deprivation, right? How many times have I told you, don't improve your strength like this, it's easy to have an unstable foundation. Sooner or later, something big will happen. All right. Yu Ying saw Zhong Zhenyong expose her scandal in front of Yang Kai and quickly interrupted him and said coquettishly, Let's go quickly. It was thanks to Brother Feng that I was safe and sound. Brother Feng is my savior. Then you have to treat him better in the future. Zhong Zhenyong smiled slightly. It seemed that because Yu Ying had told Yang Kai a lot, Zhong Zhenyong's attitude towards Yang Kai was quite good, and he obviously wanted to befriend him. Under Yu Ying's urging, the three immediately set off. Zhong Zhenyong seemed to have a goal in mind and led the way without saying a word, while Yang Kai and Yu Ying could only follow behind. After flying for a while, Yu Ying couldn't help asking, Brother Zhong, where are we going? We're going to find the others. They seem to have found a very interesting place. Interesting? Yu Ying's beautiful eyes lit up when she heard this, and she asked, What's so interesting about it? You'll know when we get there. Zhong Zhenyong kept her in suspense and didn't explain. Yang Kai's expression changed as he asked, Is Brother Yin also there? Zhong Zhenyong replied, I'm not sure. I also received a message from my fellow sect members and was about to rush over, but I didn't expect to receive a message from junior sister Yu halfway, so I stopped and waited for you. While speaking, he glanced at Yang Kai and smiled. Brother Feng and junior brother Yin have a very good relationship, for you to remember him so much. Yang Kai's heart skipped a beat as he realized that he was too eager, but he still said without changing his expression, I received a lot of kindness from Brother Yin in the territory of the Great Desolate Star in my early years, but I never had a chance to repay him, so I naturally miss him. Knowing how to repay kindness, Brother Feng is also a person who values friendship. My Netherworld sect welcomes people like you. Zhong Zhenyong laughed. Yang Kai said, It is this Feng's honor to join the Netherworld sect, but I don't know how high the threshold of your noble sect is. Zhong Zhenyong patted Yang Kai on the shoulder and said, Don't worry, you won't have any problems. Then I'll count on Brother Zhong's auspicious words. The three of them chatted as they moved forward. 2 days later, a huge dark red stars suddenly appeared in front of them. When they saw these stars, whether it was Zhong Zhenyong, Yu Ying, or Yang Kai, they were all shocked. Because since entering the shattered star sea, the cultivation stars they had encountered were all broken. They had never encountered a complete cultivation star, but at this moment, such a cultivation star had appeared in their field of vision. The star was enormous, and it lay across the starry sky for countless tens of thousands of years. When looked at from afar, it was like an enormous eye that was coldly watching the movements in the surroundings, and it caused others to shudder with fear and feel an indescribable pressure for no reason. Not only that, but this cultivation star also seemed to be exuding a terrifying amount of heat, causing the surrounding void to distort. Around these stars, there were countless black holes of various sizes, and if one's line of sight fell into these black holes, they would be completely swallowed up. Brother Zhong. Yu Ying's pretty face paled slightly as she leaned a little closer to Zhong Zhenyong and asked, Is this the interesting place you mentioned before? Zhong Zhenyong grinned and said, Exactly. Yang Kai was moved and said, What rich source strength, and, it seems to be somewhat different from ordinary source strength. Zhong Zhenyong nodded and said, Because it is a fire attribute source, not a source strength of stars. If a cultivator who cultivates a fire attribute secret art or secret technique obtains the source strength here, they will definitely soar to the sky. Fire attribute source. Yang Kai's expression changed as he suddenly thought of Liu Yang. This thing would be of great use to Liu Yang. It was just that he hadn't seen Liu Yang since they separated a few days ago, so he didn't know if she had noticed the fire attribute source here. However, he still had Zhong Ruoshi with him. This cultivation star seemed to be full of dangers. Even if Liu Yang sensed the fire attribute source here, she and Zhong Ruoxi might not necessarily enter. After all, Zhong Ruoxi's strength was still too low. Instead, he could go find the fire attribute source and leave it to Liu Yang. Yang Kai secretly made up his mind and became interested in these strange stars. Just as he was lost in thought, he suddenly felt a sense of crisis. Immediately afterward, a tyrannical force rushed toward him. His expression changed slightly as he saw a huge ghost claw coming at his heart. He had seen this ghost claw once before. It was the secret technique Yu Ying used in her battle with Guan Qi the last time he met her. It was a symbol of the Netherworld sect. In an instant, Yang Kai understood who was attacking him. The distance was too close, and the other party's sneak attack came without warning. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been helpless, but Yang Kai had the Tao of space. How could he be so easily hit? At the critical moment, he directly used the Nihility secret technique, and his body suddenly became illusory. The white ghost claw directly penetrated Yang Kai's body and hit into the depths of the void, quickly disappearing. Yang Kai's body became solid again, and he looked at Zhong Zhenyong with a cold expression. Chapter 2443. Brother Zhong, what are you doing? Only now did Yu Ying realize what had happened and stared at Zhong Zhenyong in astonishment, not knowing why he had suddenly attacked Yang Kai. After all, Zhong Zhenyong's attitude towards Yang Kai had been quite good the entire time, even chatting and laughing with him, so why had Zhong Zhenyong suddenly become hostile? Yu Ying could not understand this at all. That's right, Brother Zhong, what are you doing? Yang Kai stared coldly at Zhong Zhenyong and said with a gloomy expression, what did this Feng do to offend you? Why are you trying to kill me? This Feng? Zhong Zhenyong raised his eyebrows, laughed, and said in a low voice, Brother Feng, this Zhong will only ask you one question. If you answer it well, this Zhong will apologize for what happened just now. If you can't answer it, hey, Yang Kai slowly narrowed his eyes and said, Brother Zhong, just ask. Zhong Zhenyong's expression became serious as he shouted, Brother Feng, which sect did you come from on Great Desolate Star? How did you meet Junior Brother Yin? Hearing this, Yang Kai fell into deep thought. Zhong Zhenyong paid close attention to the changes in Yang Kai's expression, not wanting to miss a single detail. Yu Ying stood to the side, looking at this and that. Even if she was stupid, she realized that something was wrong and could not help but frown, quietly circulating her source qi as she stared vigilantly at Yang Kai. After a short while, Yang Kai looked up at Zhong Zhenyong and said, Brother Zhong, these are 2 questions, right? You didn't keep your word. Zhong Zhenyong was stunned for a moment before angrily saying, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 questions, just answer them. Yang Kai grinned and looked at Zhong Zhenyong thoughtfully. Brother Zhong, it seems you know something. This person had suddenly launched a sneak attack on him. Obviously, he had obtained some information about him. He knew that this Feng De was a fake. Brother Zhong, what's going on? Yu Ying asked with an ugly expression. Zhong Zhenyong snorted and pointed at Yang Kai. Junior sister Yu, this guy called Feng De who has been following you around is a fake. Fake? Yu Ying was stunned and looked at Yang Kai in astonishment. The real Feng De is already dead. Dead? Yu Ying couldn't help but feel a little dazed. He muttered, how could this be? If Feng De was dead, then how did this person know so much about senior martial Brother Yin? What was the relationship between this person and Brother Yin? Why did he pretend to be Feng De to get close to Brother Yin? Thinking of how she had been with Yang Kai for so long without knowing his true identity, Yu Ying couldn't help shuddering. The real Feng De died in the Starlight Corridor. Junior Brother Yin saw it with his own eyes, so it can't be fake. And the person in front of you has some grudges with Junior Brother Yin. Zhong Zhenyong sneered and looked at Yang Kai sarcastically. Am I right, Brother Yang? He placed great emphasis on the words Brother Yang. Yang Kai raised his brow. He said in surprise, oh? You even know my surname? It seems that the one who sent you the message should be Yin Lesheng. While speaking, his eyes lit up slightly as he looked at the strange dark red stars. Although Zhong Zhenyong didn't mention where Yin Lesheng was now, Yang Kai was 90% sure that Yin Lisheng was among the stars. Otherwise, Zhong Zhenyong wouldn't have been able to contact him and then ask for his information. Yes. Zhong Zhenyong didn't deny it. These things were indeed told to me by junior brother Yin. No matter what grudges you have with junior brother Yin, you won't have a chance to take revenge on him. Saying so, a fierce and greedy look appeared on Zhong Zhenyong's face as he stared at Yang Kai like a hungry wolf staring at a piece of fat meat. Who are you? Why did you lie to me? Yu Ying was furious, her beautiful eyes spitting flames as she glared at Yang Kai with a murderous look on her face. Yang Kai glanced at her and coldly said, "You're really a heartless woman. This young master saved your life before, but now you're asking for it. Now you dare to show murderous intent towards this young master, it's really sad." Yu Ying shouted back, "So what? You dared to lie to me, you deserve to die." She turned her head and said to Zhong Zhenyong, "Brother Zhong, this person has a complete star source. If you can obtain it, it will be of great benefit to you." Zhong Zhenyong licked his lips and said excitedly, "I naturally know about this." In the Netherworld sect, although he believed that his current strength was not much worse than Yin Lisheng's, with Yin Lisheng's terrifying rate of progress, it was only a matter of time before Yin Lisheng surpassed him. The biggest reason for Yin Lisheng's rapid progress was that he was a star master and had a complete star source. This was an opportunity that no cultivator could ask for. But now, another cultivator with a complete star source was in front of him. This star source was different from the shattered star sea's star source. If he could obtain it, the benefits it would bring to him would be unimaginable. He wouldn't have to worry about being surpassed by Yin Lisheng in the future. Since everyone had a complete star source, it would be a competition of hard work and persistence. In this regard, Zhong Zhenyong was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone. Yang Kai suddenly asked, "Is Yin Lisheng really on the star now?" Zhong Zhenyong coldly snorted and said, "What's the point of asking someone who is about to die?" Yang Kai grinned and said, "Since I've found Yin Lisheng, there's no need to keep you alive." Zhong Zhenyong was startled when he heard this and shouted angrily, "Boy, you're the first one who dares to say this in front of this Zhong Netherworld Purgatory banner, die quickly." As soon as his words fell, he suddenly stretched out his hand and summoned a black banner. From the black banner, a burst of ghostly wails and howls rang out, setting off gusts of cold wind that seemed capable of freezing one's soul. When the Netherworld Purgatory banner unfurled, the yin qi rolling around it condensed into a tangible form and wrapped around Yang Kai like the yellow springs. Seeing Zhong Zhenyong use his trump card as soon as he came up, Yu Ying's pretty face changed and she hurriedly retreated to avoid being affected. Good stuff. It should be a good gift for Gui Zhu. Yang Kai looked at the Netherworld Purgatory banner and couldn't help but light up. This strange artifact was somewhat similar to Gui Zhu's 10,000 soul banner and should be of the same origin, but the grade of this Netherworld Purgatory banner was much higher than Gui Zhu's 10,000 soul banner. Yang Kai even felt a faint emperor pressure from it. In other words, this artifact should have been personally refined by a master from the Emperor realm and had some embryonic form of an Emperor artifact, but it was not fully formed yet. However, as long as Zhong Zhenyong advanced to the Emperor realm, he could use his Emperor aura to nourish this Netherworld Purgatory banner, and it would become an Emperor artifact sooner or later. As expected of one of the top 3 disciples of a great sect, the moment he made a move, it was extremely extraordinary. The bursts of ghostly wails and howls were like demonic sounds, full of magical power, enough to affect the mind of any hostile cultivator. Zhong Zhenyong was so aggressive that he obviously intended to kill Yang Kai as soon as he attacked, not giving him any chance to fight back. The complete source of stars was simply too attractive to him. Yang Kai waited solemnly, raised his hand slightly, and quickly formed a series of hand seals. After a few complicated movements, an inexplicable power suddenly spread out in all directions, and the mysterious power of principles dissipated in the void, bursting out in all directions. Zhong Zhenyong's eyes bulged as he suddenly felt that something was wrong, because at this moment, he suddenly felt that his thoughts and movements had slowed down, and even everything around him seemed to have stopped. The only thing that didn't stop was the guy who had pretended to be Fengde. What kind of divine technique is this? Zhong Zhenyong's face changed drastically as a chill suddenly appeared in his heart. Although Yang Kai's hand seals had not been fully formed, Zhong Zhenyong already felt that something was wrong. This guy surnamed Yang was not to be trifled with. From the unseen world, a murmur entered his ears, shaking his soul. Flowing time, great emperor, withering glory, like a shuttle, like a dream. An unprecedented sense of crisis suddenly appeared, and at this critical moment, Zhong Zhenyong bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. With this spurt of blood essence, the strange stillness around him was finally broken, and everything suddenly came to life. But when he looked up, a huge hand seal had already appeared in front of him, making it impossible for him to avoid it. Hong. With a muffled bang, Zhong Zhenyong immediately froze in place. He didn't feel the impact he had imagined, nor did he notice any trace of injury on his body, but to his amazement, he discovered that a strange force had invaded his body, and his vitality and lifespan were flowing away at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it was as if hundreds of thousands of years of the flowing time great emperor had passed through his body. Brother Zhong! Yu Ying screamed, her eyes widening as she stared at Zhong Zhenyong in disbelief, a look of horror on her face, as if she had just witnessed a terrible scene. Zhong Zhenyong also seemed to realize something, slightly raising his withered hand, looking at it for a moment before asking in a trembling voice, You, what did you do to me? Yang Kai looked at him coldly, raised his hand, and sent a moon blade towards him. If it was Zhong Zhenyong at his peak, he might have been able to avoid this blow, but at this moment, he was a doddering old man with 90% of his vitality drained away, so there was no way for him to react. The pitch-black moon blade was like a huge blade as it passed through Zhong Zhenyong's body, directly splitting him in half. Yu Ying's face suddenly turned pale. Dead, brother Zhong Zhenyong was dead, and he had died in such a muddle-headed way. Brother Zhong, who was ranked in the top 3 in the sect and could be regarded as a young talent in the Eastern Territory and even the entire star boundary, had been killed by a cultivator of the same level in the blink of an eye. If this kind of thing had not happened right under her nose, Yu Ying would never have believed it. But the facts were right in front of her, so she couldn't doubt anything. Only now did she realize that Yang Kai had been hiding his strength all this time. Previously, when he fought Zhong Hao of Brahma Holy Land, he even spat out a mouthful of blood. That was undoubtedly just an act. It was ridiculous that she naively thought that Yang Kai was really not Zhong Hao's opponent. Chapter 2444. With the strength this person had displayed, Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian weren't even worthy of carrying his shoes. How could a mere third-order Dao source realm be so powerful? Facing this man who was pretending to be Fengde, Yu Ying felt a sense of panic and powerlessness, as if she was facing the Emperor realm. She couldn't even summon the courage to run away and could only stand there stupidly, her tender body shivering like a quail in the middle of winter. After killing Zhong Zhenyong, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and collected his space ring and netherworld purgatory banner. A streak of starlight then shot out from the back of Zhong Zhenyong's hand and shot towards Yang Kai, branding itself into the back of Yang Kai's hand. Yang Kai had noticed before that Zhong Zhenyong's star seal was the same as his own, a 6-point star seal. After the two of them fused, it should provide a lot of nourishment to his star seal, allowing him to take another step closer to leveling up. Yang Kai turned his gaze and stared coldly at Yu Ying. Senior brother Feng, I. Yu Ying met his gaze and her face immediately paled. She stuttered, unable to utter a complete sentence. You've worked hard on this journey, Yang Kai said lightly. Yu Ying squeezed out a smile and said in a trembling voice, It is little sister's honor to be able to serve brother Feng. Yang Kai gently nodded and suddenly raised his hand. Space force fluctuated and a pitch-black moon blade slashed towards her. No. Yu Ying's beautiful face instantly turned pale when she saw this scene and she screamed loudly. Although she didn't know what this secret technique was, she had just seen Zhong Zhenyong die to this pitch-black moon blade with her own eyes. Now that Yang Kai was using this move against her, it was obvious he didn't intend to leave her any way out. As she screamed, she hurriedly summoned a defensive artifact. Pushing her source chi to protect herself, she tried to avoid this calamity. But to her horror, this pitch-black moon blade was so tyrannical that she couldn't fathom it. It cut through all her defenses like tofu and slashed through her body. Yu Ying only felt a slight pain in her body before she lost consciousness in the next moment. Yang Kai waved his hand. Taking her space ring, Yang Kai waited for a moment before Yu Ying's star seal also flew out and was accepted by him. He raised his hand again and shot out a few streams of energy, turning Zhong Zhenyong and Yu Ying's corpses into dust. He did not hesitate to kill Yu Ying. Regardless of whether he was a fake Feng De or not, it was true that he had saved this woman's life. However, this woman did not have the slightest intention of repaying his kindness. On the contrary, after learning of his unknown origins, he immediately changed his attitude. Such a person's death was simply not worth pitying. Besides, Yang Kai didn't have a good impression of her. After doing all this, Yang Kai suddenly frowned and glanced behind him. He noticed that the people from Brahma Holy Land were chasing after him. He didn't know if they had received news that there was a fire attribute origin here, so they had come here specifically, or if they had followed them here. However, Yang Kai didn't intend to meet the people of Brahma Holy Land. Those people from Brahma Holy Land had a grudge against Yu Ying. Now that Yu Ying was dead, he naturally didn't need to get entangled with Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian. His figure flickered as he rushed towards the dark red stars at an extremely fast speed. The closer he got, the more Yang Kai could feel the violent heat emanating from these stars. The fire attribute origin hidden here seemed to be something extremely extraordinary, and Yang Kai couldn't help but secretly look forward to it. An hour later, he landed in a certain spot on the planet. As far as his eyes could see, he was surrounded by desolate lands. On the planet, it seemed to have been burned by a great fire, and now, not even a blade of grass could be seen. Yang Kai didn't know how these stars had been completely preserved in the battlefield of the great emperors. Hair. Flaming cloud mushroom. Yang Kai's gaze was suddenly attracted by something that looked like a cloud of fire. With his eyesight, he naturally recognized that this was an emperor-grade spirit herb, the fire cloud mushroom. However, he didn't expect that there would be a spirit herb growing in this kind of place, and an emperor-grade spirit herb at that. But thinking about it carefully, the fire attribute energy here was so rich, and there was even a fire attribute origin, so it wasn't surprising that a fire attribute spirit herb could be born here. Just as he was hesitating, Yang Kai suddenly saw a figure rushing towards the fire cloud mushroom. Obviously, this person had also discovered that this spirit herb was extraordinary and wanted to pick it. The fire cloud mushroom was an emperor-grade spirit herb. It was priceless, and its growth conditions were extremely harsh, so it was much more valuable than ordinary emperor-grade spirit herbs. As an emperor-grade alchemist, how could Yang Kai allow the spirit herb in front of him to be snatched away? So, his figure flickered and he arrived in front of the fire cloud mushroom first. Reaching down, Yang Kai dug out a large piece of the soil where the fire cloud mushroom grew and threw it into his sealed world bead along with the fire cloud mushroom. It wasn't until Yang Kai finished doing all this that the figure rushed in front of him. Seemingly realizing that he was a step too late, this person stopped 10 meters in front of Yang Kai and glared at him with a disgruntled expression. Yang Kai glanced at this person faintly. After seeing this person's appearance clearly, he couldn't help but frown. Because at a glance, he couldn't tell whether this person was a man or a woman. If this person was a man, he was a bit too handsome. His skin was unbelievably white and he didn't have an Adam's apple. If he was a woman, Yang Kai couldn't see any characteristics of a woman. His chest was flat, his butt wasn't perky, and although his figure was slender, he didn't have any curves to speak of. His clothes were also extremely unisex, the kind that could be worn by both men and women. This guy is neither a man nor a woman. What the hell is this? Yang Kai had a strange look on his face. Just as Yang Kai was carefully sizing up the other party, the person suddenly said, "Friend, isn't it a bit unkind to do this? I seem to be the one who found this spirit flower first." As soon as this person said this, Yang Kai was shocked. He thought that he wouldn't be able to tell the other party's gender based on their appearance and figure, but after hearing this person's words, he realized that he was too naive. This person's voice was somewhat magnetic and very pleasant to listen to, but it was also very unisex. It was impossible to tell whether this person was a man or a woman. This person also had a third-order Dao source realm cultivation, the same as Yang Kai, but the star seal on the back of his hand was only a 5-point star seal. Yang Kai didn't bother with the other party's gender anymore and just grinned. Brother, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. This is an ownerless treasure, so it naturally belongs to whoever gets it first. As soon as this was said, the person frowned and looked extremely angry, cursing, "You're the brother, your whole family are brothers. Can't you see that I'm a woman?" Yang Kai was dumbfounded, seriously sizing up this person who claimed to be a woman, and only after a while did he seriously shake his head and say, "I really can't see it." The woman seemed to be furious, her face red with anger, and she reached out to touch her neck, saying, "Are you blind? Can't you see that I don't have an Adam's apple?" Yang Kai's face darkened. "I can see that, but I can't see anything else." As he spoke, Yang Kai's eyes drifted towards her chest. The woman's face immediately darkened. She couldn't help but puff out her chest. Immediately, a small bump appeared on her chest. Yang Kai clapped his hands, saying, "Now I have some clues." "You're really blind." The woman seemed to be in a bad mood, and she gritted her teeth and cursed. Yang Kai wiped the sweat on his forehead, saying, "Miss, how old are you this year? Children need to be civilized, you can't curse people. You're a child, you'll be a child your whole life." The woman was furious, and she raised her hand, sending a beam of light directly towards Yang Kai. This attack wasn't too powerful, and the woman didn't have the slightest killing intent when she attacked. Obviously she was just angry at Yang Kai for mocking her. After she finished attacking, she didn't pay attention to Yang Kai's reaction, and ran away without looking back. Yang Kai happily raised his hand, scattering her attack, and looked up, only to see the woman a few thousand feet away, turning back to glare at him hatefully before disappearing. "Don't go, miss, I haven't asked for your name yet," Yang Kai shouted with a grin. But how could there be any response? That girl had long since run off to who knows where. She must have been really angered by Kai Yang, so she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. She also couldn't be bothered to argue with Kai Yang about the ownership of the flame cloud grass. After being disturbed by this androgynous fellow, Yang Kai's mood suddenly became a lot better. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai checked the surroundings and determined that there were no other spirit herbs before summoning his wooden boat and flying towards the place where the fire attribute origin force was rich. What he could be sure of now was that Yin Lasheng was on this star, but he couldn't determine his specific location. However, moving towards the place where the origin force was rich was absolutely right, because Yin Lasheng would definitely go there. As long as he could find Yin Lasheng, he could inquire about Xiao Xiao's whereabouts. Since coming to the star boundary, Yang Kai had been separated from Xiao Xiao, and over the years, he had been constantly thinking about him. Xiao Xiao's uniqueness made it easy for him to become the target of many masters. These stars were very strange. Yang Kai had been in the Shattered Star Sea for so long, but he had never encountered any stars with spirit herbs, but there were some here, and a lot of them at that. All the spirit herbs here were fire attribute spirit herbs, which should have been bred because of the fire attribute origin force. Each spirit herb was very old and very valuable. Yang Kai picked a lot of useful things along the way. There seemed to be a lot of cultivator who came to this cultivation star. Yang Kai occasionally encountered some people, but these people rarely acted alone like him. Basically, they were either in pairs or in groups of 3 or 5. Obviously, they were all disciples of the same sect or people who were already familiar with each other. These people were all fierce and full of aura. At first glance, it was clear that they were not to be trifled with. A day later, Yang Kai suddenly noticed a huge energy fluctuation coming from a very distant location. Yang Kai, who was flying, immediately came to a halt and stared in that direction. He felt a burst of emperor pressure coming from that direction, which startled him. Could it be that someone broke through to the Emperor realm here? Chapter 2445. In this Shattered Star Sea, a cultivator could break through to the Emperor realm. Every time the Shattered Star Sea opened, many people would come here to pry into the mysteries of the Emperor realm, allowing them to reach the heavens in a single bound. Therefore, Yang Kai could not help but have this guess. But after thinking about it again, he felt that something was wrong, because this did not seem to be caused by someone breaking through. At the very least, Yang Kai did not notice the world energy baptism that came with breaking through to the Great Realm. Since it's not a breakthrough, is it the birth of an emperor artifact? Realizing this, Yang Kai was shocked and quickly turned around to fly in that direction. He had heard before that in this shattered star sea, there would occasionally be some extremely high-level emperor artifacts appearing. This was because the great emperors who died in the shattered star sea were not just the great emperor of heaven devouring great emperor, but several other great emperors were also buried with him. The various treasures that these great emperors who died here originally had were also left in the shattered star sea. Flowing time great emperors changed, and the sea reincarnated, waiting for the arrival of the fated one. Therefore, any emperor artifact that appeared in the shattered star sea had extraordinary significance and extremely high value, causing countless people to scramble for it. The emperor artifacts of the great emperors were completely different from ordinary emperor artifacts. If one really wanted to compare them, it was equivalent to the difference between an emperor artifact and a Dao source grade artifact. It could not be measured. Naturally, no one would miss out on such a good thing. Just as Yang Kai was trying his best to fly towards the place where the emperor pressure was coming from, he suddenly felt the world tremble. Immediately afterwards, a muffled sound like a morning bell rang out in front of him, and the convergence of this sound was visible to the naked eye, like a violent storm sweeping out in all directions. It contained an extremely terrifying power. Yang Kai's face changed drastically. Hurriedly circulating his secret art, Yang Kai's figure fell while he guarded his mind. Hualala, the ground around him seemed to have been plowed and rolled up, giving people the illusion that it was the end of the world. As the sound waves rushed over, Yang Kai suddenly became unstable and saw stars. His mind was in a daze, and only the huge bell kept echoing, almost making him lose his mind. Shocked, Yang Kai hurriedly urged the power of the soul-warming lotus to cleanse his knowledge sea. Only then did he recover from his trance. Looking around, Yang Kai sucked in a breath. The surrounding landscape had undergone a great change, and several small peaks had risen from the ground. The mountain peak that originally existed was gone, and countless abyss-like ravines appeared on the ground. It was a daunting sight, and the entire world seemed to be covered in a haze. Yang Kai's face looked. Such terrifying power was definitely not something that cultivators who had entered the shattered star sea to gain experience could achieve. This was the only explanation. Was the power of the emperor artifact. It was definitely a treasure of the great emperors. Yang Kai's heart suddenly became fiery. Wiping the blood flowing from his nose, he rushed forward as fast as lightning. There were many people around, their clothes fluttering in the wind. Obviously, many cultivators had the same plan as him and were rushing over. Yang Kai cursed in his heart. Sure enough, none of these people who came to the shattered star sea were simple. Even he was slightly injured just now, but he didn't expect that none of them would be killed by the sound waves. After a short while, he came to the source of the sound and stood in the air. Looking around, Yang Kai's eyes couldn't help but tremble. About 1,000 meters in front of him, a strangely shaped mountain peak came into view. This mountain peak was about 300 meters high and had a strange shape. It looked like a huge bell on the ground. Halfway up the mountain, gravel kept rolling down, and from the inside of the mountain, dazzling brilliance and rich emperor aura shot out. An emperor artifact. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he immediately realized that the mountain peak was where the emperor artifact was located. The other cultivator who came here obviously also realized this, but the power of the emperor artifact just now was too terrifying, so even though they were all here, no one dared to act rashly. In front of the mountain peak, there were several broken corpses lying on the ground at this moment. All of them were bleeding from their 7 orifices and looked very miserable. Yang Kai didn't know which sect they were from, but judging from their appearance and position, they should have been the first group to discover this emperor artifact. However, when they tried to take it away, they suffered a backlash from the emperor artifact and were killed directly. The brilliance of star seals shot out from the corpses of those people. These star seals that belonged to the dead people hovered in the air for a while before suddenly, as if attracted by something, they shot towards the crowd from all directions. One of the extremely bright star seals flew towards Yang Kai's position. How could Yang Kai miss such a good thing? Immediately, his figure flickered and flew towards the star seal. At the same time, countless cultivators moved, fixing their eyes on those star seals and trying to snatch them. There were about 7 or 8 cultivators who were staring at the star seals like Yang Kai, and all of them had extraordinary cultivation. Many of them were from the third-order Dao source realm. However, even though they were fast, Yang Kai was not slow either. He slightly manipulated the power of space and snatched the star seal before anyone else could do it. However, the moment he touched the star seal, a figure suddenly shot towards him and reached out to grab his hand. However, because the other party didn't use any source chi and didn't have the slightest malicious intent, Yang Kai didn't react much. But this person is so fast. Yang Kai was slightly surprised because he didn't notice that someone could pose any threat to him snatching this star seal, but now it seemed that if he had been a little slower, this star seal would have been snatched away by someone else. This cultivator who was only one step away from snatching the star seal was simply too fast. If Yang Kai didn't have his space force, he wouldn't have been able to compete with this person. Yang Kai looked at this person in surprise, but after seeing this person's face, he couldn't help grinning and saying, "We meet again." He realized that the cultivator he was a little concerned about was not someone else, but the guy he had seen before. He was neither male nor female, and could be both male and female. "It's you again." The woman also saw Yang Kai and frowned, a look of annoyance appearing on her face as she said in disgust, "Why are you so persistent? Everywhere you go, you want to snatch my things." Just now, Yang Kai had snatched a flaming cloud Ganoderma, and now, Yang Kai had snatched a star seal. Was this man sent by the heavens to snatch things from her? Yang Kai smiled and said, "Miss, you're talking as if I've been chasing after you. Don't worry, I'm not interested in women with small breast." When the woman heard this, her face immediately turned cold and she ground her teeth. Her breasts were small and her buttocks were flat. These were the biggest regrets of her life, and now that Yang Kai had pointed them out in front of her face, it would be strange if she didn't have a good expression. "If you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouth off," the woman said hatefully. Yang Kai smiled and said, "Then you should let go of my hand first. If you do this, I'll call you molester." When the woman heard this, she snorted and retracted her hand. Then, she turned around and descended. The other cultivator who had rushed over but failed to snatch a star seal looked at Yang Kai in astonishment at this moment, their expressions extremely strange. Seeing Yang Kai's gaze sweep over them, all of them shuddered and stepped back with pale faces, opening up a distance between them. Yang Kai frowned, not knowing why these people had such a reaction, but the next moment, he suddenly realized and said with a sullen face, "That guy is a woman. Do you think I'm interested in men?" Hearing this, these people's faces turned even paler and they all scattered, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Yang Kai's face was filled with black lines as he thought to himself, "I'm afraid this is the end of the world." He glanced around unhappily, but in the next moment, he no longer cared about these trivial matters and instead looked in a certain direction excitedly. Over there, a familiar figure was competing with someone in mid-air for one of the star seals. His attacks were ruthless and his cultivation was superb. Although the opponent he was competing with was also from the third-order Dao source realm, he was obviously not this guy's opponent and was forced to retreat. Yin Lesheng. Yang Kai never expected that he would see Yin Lesheng so easily. Although he had inferred from the clues revealed by Zhong Zhenyong that Yin Lesheng was on these stars, he didn't know exactly where he was. At this moment, however, he actually saw Yin Lesheng. This guy was obviously attracted by the commotion here. Yang Kai's mood couldn't help fluctuating slightly, but on second thought, he quickly flew down, took out something from his space ring, put it on his face, and then circulated his source chi. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a burly man, completely different from his previous appearance. This mask that could change one's appearance was something he had plundered from Sangda's space ring. At that time, in the solitary void-sealed world, Sangda had relied on this artifact to change his appearance and leave Clear Sky City without being noticed. Otherwise, with his fame and identity, he wouldn't have been able to go out to sea quietly. Although Sangda wasn't a good person, his level of artifact refining was extremely high. The effect of this artifact he personally refined was excellent. Even if someone familiar with Yang Kai was face to face, they wouldn't be able to discover him unless there was a master from the Emperor realm using their divine sense. The reason why Yang Kai changed his appearance was not that he was afraid of Yin Lesheng, but that he didn't want Yin Lesheng to be vigilant when he saw him. If he wanted to inquire about Xiao Xiao, he had to capture Yin Lesheng alive, which was much more difficult than defeating or killing him. Moreover, judging from Yin Lesheng's current situation, this guy was one of the few Dao Source Realm masters, so he might have some trump cards up his sleeve. On the other side, Yang Kai had just finished changing his appearance when he noticed a strange gaze directed towards him. Yang Kai turned his head and found that it was the androgynous person. She had undoubtedly seen all his movements just now. Yang Kai didn't care too much and just grinned, flew over to her side, and cupped his fists politely. "I haven't asked for young lady's name yet." The woman frowned, looking a little impatient, but still replied, "Lan He." "So it's young lady Lan He, this one is Yang Kai." Chapter 2446. "I'm not interested in your name, so you don't have to get close to me," Lan He said coldly. She had a very bad impression of Yang Kai. After all, Yang Kai had robbed her twice. It would be strange if she had a good impression of him, so she didn't want to deal with Yang Kai from the bottom of her heart, lest this guy really ended up stealing her treasures. Moreover, looking at this guy's sneaky appearance, it was obvious that he had provoked a powerful enemy, so he didn't dare to show his true face. Since he came to talk to her at this time, he might have the intention of dragging her into the water. Lan He naturally had to keep a respectful distance from such a person. Yang Kai grinned and said, "It's fate that brought us together. Miss Lan He, why are you so cold? Who's fated to meet you? Get lost." Lan He couldn't help scolding Yang Kai when she saw him chattering like this. Okay. Yang Kai was too embarrassed to continue entangling with her, so he stood to the side and watched quietly. Speaking of which, although Lan He had a bad temper, she was still a good person. Yang Kai had robbed her twice, and although Lan He didn't rob him, she didn't pester him endlessly. If it were any other cultivator, it was very likely that they would continue to rob Yang Kai after he got his hands on it. There were only a few star seals, but there were dozens of cultivators attracted by the movement here, so those star seals quickly settled down. Yang Kai noticed that Yin Lesheng had indeed snatched the star seal and then landed about 2,000 feet away from him. Beside Yin Lesheng, there were 3 other disciples of the Netherworld sect, all of them emitting gloomy auras. Obviously, they cultivated the special secret art of the Netherworld sect. They looked around. No one approached them, probably because they felt uncomfortable with the gloomy aura coming from them. Just as Yang Kai was secretly observing Yin Lesheng, this guy seemed to be aware of something and turned his head to look in Yang Kai's direction, his eyes filled with coldness. Yang Kai subtly averted his gaze, slightly surprised. When Yang Kai met this guy for the first time in the Starlight Corridor, he knew that he was the #1 expert in the territory of the Great Desolate Star. Not only was Yin Lesheng a star master, but his aptitude was also extraordinary. This time, Yin Lesheng had really soared into the sky, and his cultivation speed was not much worse than his own. This fellow had suffered a great loss in the Starlight Corridor back then and bore a deep grudge against him. If Xiao Xiao were to land in his hands, she might suffer some kind of torture. Hence, he needed to find out Xiao Xiao's whereabouts as soon as possible. Just as Yang Kai was deep in thought, whispers could be heard all around. The gathered cultivator pointed at the bell-shaped mountain peak in front of them, trying to guess the origin of this Emperor artifact. Unfortunately, tens of thousands of years had passed since the battle in the Shattered Star Sea, so how much did the young talents of today know about what happened back then? Therefore, he had no idea what this artifact was or who had left it behind. Yang Kai's eyes wandered around. Unfortunately, he did not find anyone he was familiar with here. None of the elites from the Southern Territory were here, and he did not know where they had gone. The Shattered Star Sea was vast and filled with countless opportunities. About 10,000 cultivators had entered the Shattered Star Sea, and those who came here were just a drop in the bucket. It was normal that he could not see the elites of the Southern Territory. Brother Chi Hai, among all of us here, You are the most knowledgeable and knowledgeable. If possible, can you tell us about this Emperor artifact? Someone's voice suddenly rang out. Everyone heard this. Everyone turned to look at him. This person had a smile on his face and was quietly looking at another man dressed like a scholar not far away. Following his gaze, everyone else also turned to look at the Confucian scholar. The scholar had a gloomy expression on his face. Obviously, he did not want to show off in front of so many people, and even if he knew about the Emperor artifact in front of him, he would not be willing to share it here. However, the person who had spoken earlier had deliberately spoken loudly, causing everyone to look at him expectantly. If he did not speak, he would undoubtedly be hiding his strength and would likely offend others. With so many masters staring at him, he had to speak even if he did not want to. Everyone here was smart, so how could they not know that the relationship between the scholar and the person who had made the proposal was not very good? If they were really friends, that person would not have embarrassed the scholar like this. However, although everyone was well aware of this, no one blamed the person who had spoken. Instead, they all looked eagerly at the scholar, wanting to hear his opinion. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the Confucian scholar could only glare hatefully at the person who had spoken at the beginning and lightly said, "I wouldn't dare claim to be knowledgeable and knowledgeable. This Chi just had some free time and read some ancient books. I don't deserve such praise." The man smiled slightly and said, "Brother Chi Hai is too modest. Compared to Brother Chi Hai, this one's knowledge is like the light of a firefly competing with the light of the moon. Please give me some advice, Brother Chi Hai." As soon as this person's voice fell, a big man with a ferocious face suddenly spoke up. "What is the origin of that Emperor artifact? Why is it so powerful?" That's right. Brother Chi, if you know something, why don't you share it with us? We're all very curious. Tell us." Chi Hai took a deep breath. He was riding a tiger and was in a difficult position. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Shattered Star Sea is the battlefield of the great emperors. I think everyone should know this." Many people gently nodded. In the past, although the great emperors of heaven-devouring great emperor possessed extraordinary cultivation and were invincible in the entire star boundary, he was too reckless and killed wantonly. In the end, he incurred the wrath of the heavens. The great emperors joined forces to fight him here, eventually destroying a star's territory and forming this Shattered Star Sea. In that battle, rumor has it that the great emperors of heaven-devouring great emperor were jointly killed by the great emperors, but the price they paid was extremely heavy. Among the masters who participated in the encirclement and annihilation of heaven-devouring great emperor, many died or were injured. None of the great emperors came out unscathed. I heard that Heaven's Revelations is still recuperating in Heaven's Secret Valley, in retreat. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Yang Kai's face was also filled with shock. He didn't know whether this Chi Hai was telling the truth or not, but he had heard of the great emperors of Heaven's Revelations. He was one of the current 10 great emperors. This great emperors was a very special one among the 10 great emperors because legend had it that he could see through Heaven's secret, see the future, and see the past. Before the opening of the Four Seasons realm, the great emperors of Heaven's Revelations had sent a message to Azure Sun Temple, informing all the major sects in the entire southern territory that a star seal would appear in the Four Seasons realm. If what Chi Hai said was true, then the great emperors of Heaven's Revelations took tens of thousands of years to heal. It was hard to imagine how serious his injuries were when he encircled and annihilated the great emperors of heaven-devouring great emperor. But then again, being injured for tens of thousands of years and still not dying, this great emperors of Heaven's Revelations was really amazing. And in that battle, a total of 4 great emperors died. Chi Hai's expression turned solemn. "Which 4? Someone asked anxiously. Chi Hai said with great familiarity, "The great emperors of Blue Lotus, the great emperors of Yuan Ding, the great emperors of Blue Sea, and the great emperors of Martial Flame, a total of 4. What he said was basically something no one had ever heard of, so everyone listened attentively, including Yang Kai. He had heard of the great emperors of Blue Lotus a few days ago. Sister Hua had mentioned this great emperors before, saying that someone had obtained his indestructible Blue Lotus in the Shattered Star Sea 5,000 years ago, and later established Blue Lotus Palace in the Eastern Territory. Now, it was one of the top sects in the Eastern Territory. These 4 masters fell here, and their Life Emperor artifacts, space rings, and other treasures and inheritances were all lost in the Shattered Star Sea, including the indestructible Blue Lotus of the Great Emperors of Blue Lotus, the Mountains and Rivers Bell of the Yuanding Great Emperors of Mountains and Rivers Bell, the Blue Sea Great Emperors Reverse Blue Sea, and the Phoenix True Fire of the Great Emperors of Martial Flame. All of them are peerless treasures. Chi-Hai said all this in one breath, paused slightly, and then continued, the indestructible Blue Lotus has been obtained. Everyone should have heard of the Blue Lotus Palace in the Eastern Territory. The Palace Master of Blue Lotus Palace is the current owner of the indestructible Blue Lotus, but the treasures of the other 3 great emperors have not been found yet. Speaking of this, his eyes turned slightly, looked at the bell-shaped mountain peak, and shouted, the Emperor artifact in front of you should be the Mountains and Rivers Bell of the Yuanding Great Emperors. The Mountains and Rivers Bell's sound can suppress mountains and rivers, and the Emperor's aura can change the universe. Gudong. Waves of swallowing sounds rang out one after another. Everyone's gazes towards the front instantly became extremely fiery, filled with greed and covetousness. What evidence do you have? Suddenly, a questioning voice sounded. Yang Kai turned his head and found that the one who asked this question was actually Yin Lesheng. At this moment, although he looked excited, he suppressed it very well and instead looked at Chi-Hai vigilantly and asked, you say that it is the Mountains and Rivers Bell of the Yuanding Great Emperors, what evidence do you have? Chi-Hai sneered and said, if I say it is, then it is, believe it or not. Being forced to reveal such top-secret information in front of so many people, Chi-Hai was already extremely displeased in his heart. Now that he was being questioned, he naturally felt like his hot face was stuck to someone's cold butt, and his tone suddenly became cold. Since Brother Chi-Hai says so, then we will definitely believe it. Some people doubt this and that, but they don't have the ability to prove it themselves. Brother Chi-Hai, you don't have to pay attention to it. A handsome young man suddenly showed a flattering smile to Chi-Hai and berated Yin Lesheng. Yin Lesheng's eyes turned cold as he stared at the young man seriously, as if he was looking at a dead man, obviously remembering him. The young man, however, was unaware of this and still asked Chi-Hai with a smile, Brother Chi-Hai, since this is the Mountains and Rivers Bell of the Yuanding Great Emperors, how should we collect it? Please give us some pointers, Brother Chi-Hai. When everyone heard this, they all looked at him attentively, their faces full of expectation. Chi-Hai coldly snorted, if I had a way to collect it, would I still need to talk to you here? The young man looked embarrassed when he heard this. Although he knew that this question was a bit stupid, he still held some hope. Chapter 2447. Chi-Hai continued, which one of the treasures of the great emperors is not a sentient object? The Mountains and Rivers Bell is the natal emperor artifact of the Yuanding Great Emperors, and it has its own sentience. If it is willing to choose you as its master, you don't need to refine it. It will take the initiative to throw itself into your arms. If it doesn't respect you, even if you are the Emperor realm, you won't be able to refine it. The young man's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he hurriedly said, Brother Chi, don't you mean that if there is an opportunity, we can all become the master of this Mountains and Rivers Bell? Chi-Hai said with a cold face, first of all, you have to have this opportunity. The young man laughed and said proudly, this Zhong has no confidence in other things, but he is quite confident in his luck. Since this Mountains and Rivers Bell is sentient, it may choose this Zhong to be the successor of the Yuanding Great Emperors and inherit the mantle of the Great Emperors. He laughed fanatically, and as he spoke, he turned around and walked towards the Mountains and Rivers Bell. Seeing this, everyone was startled and realized that this young man surnamed Zhong was going to try to make the Mountains and Rivers Bell choose its master. For a moment, everyone looked at him curiously, wanting to know what the final result would be. Among them, a few people's eyes flickered, as if they wanted to take action, but they restrained themselves and waited to see what would happen. Chi-Hai stared at the young man's back and sneered, as if he was mocking this guy for overestimating himself. Under everyone's gaze, the young man walked briskly to 100 feet away from the bell-shaped mountain peak. Perhaps the smoothness of the journey had multiplied his confidence, and he quickened his pace with ecstasy. Soon, he was only 500 feet away from the mountain peak. And the distance was still rapidly closing. At this time, all the onlookers could not help but be a little nervous and worried about their gains and losses. They were worried that this guy would really be lucky and obtain the natal emperor artifact of the Yuanding Great Emperors. If that was the case, then this young man might become another Yuanding Great Emperors in the future. After another 10 breaths, the young man walked to the front of the mountain peak without encountering any obstacles or danger along the way. It was unimaginably smooth. Seeing this scene, even Chi-Hai, who had been sneering all this while, had a gloomy expression on his face. Everyone was thinking, could it be that this guy was really destined? The young man couldn't help but burst into laughter. I've made you wait for tens of thousands of years. This Zhong has come to take you away today. In the future, we will laugh together in the star boundary. The name of the Yuan Cauldron Master will not be covered in dust. As he spoke, he stretched his hand forward. Brilliant light flowed within the mountain peak. He seemed to have some reaction to the young man's words. This greatly boosted the confidence of the young man surnamed Zhong. Without hesitation, he pressed his palm on the mountain and released his mind to communicate with the mountains and rivers' bell's artifact spirit. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The bell-shaped mountain suddenly trembled slightly and let out a loud buzzing sound. The mountain instantly collapsed. Gravel flew everywhere. Meanwhile, a huge bell-shaped artifact appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This bell was simple and unadorned, exuding an aura of vicissitudes, as if it had come from tens of thousands of years ago. On the surface of the giant bell, runes were constantly flowing and mysterious. The light suddenly shone brightly, and as it surged, the dull sound of a bell rang out. *1. The world seemed to be torn apart, the universe seemed to be reversed, and the mountains and rivers seemed to be suppressed. The sound of the bell spread out in all directions, and the sound waves visible to the naked eye converged into an invincible tide of energy, causing everyone's complexion to change drastically as they hurriedly cast defensive measures. The moment the bell rang, the young man surnamed Zhong, who was the closest to the mountains and rivers' bell, felt as if he had been hit head-on by a mountain. His entire body flew high into the air like a paper kite, and his blood was mixed with pieces of his internal organs. His Dao Source realm aura quickly withered, and his vitality disappeared in the blink of an eye. Before he could land on the ground, the young man was already dead. Hualala, the aftermath of the sound waves was still spreading in all directions, and the impact caused the soil on the surface of the earth to fly, as if doomsday had arrived. It wasn't until 10 breaths later that everything gradually calmed down. The several dozen Dao Source realm cultivators were all in a sorry state. Some of them were even buried in the ground. Only now did they crawl up with difficulty. When they looked around, everyone's faces were filled with shock, and they were all speechless. In the midst of the shock, even the star seal left behind by the young man surnamed Zhong was no longer in the mood to snatch it. Cough cough. Chi-Hai coughed a few times, patted the dust off his body, and looked indifferently at the dead young man surnamed Zhong. It seems that you don't have this opportunity. Everyone was speechless. As expected of a great emperor's artifact, the power of the mountains and rivers bell was simply outrageous. The young man surnamed Zhong had only touched it for a moment, yet it had already caused such a huge commotion. If he could really refine it, just how much power would he be able to display? And this was definitely not the true power of the mountains and rivers bell. After all, it had been left here for tens of thousands of years, so its power must have been damaged. Just now, it was very likely that the mountains and rivers bell hadn't even exerted half of its power. So, despite the lesson of the young man surnamed Zhong, the fire in everyone's hearts was still not extinguished. Instead, it burned even more vigorously. And because of the shock just now, the mountains and rivers bell hidden in the mountain peak had completely revealed its true form. Looking at it, this emperor artifact was more than 100 meters tall and sat on the ground like a real mountain. The emperor aura and runes flowing on it were too much for the eyes to take in. Everyone stared at this mysterious thing, wanting to see some clues from it. But now, no one dared to touch it easily, so even though everyone's hearts were burning, the scene was strangely deadlocked. It seemed that everyone was secretly praying that the artifact spirit of the mountains and rivers Bell would choose them as its master. At this moment, another buzzing sound suddenly rang out. Everyone's face changed drastically, and they all looked puzzled because no one had touched the mountains and rivers Bell at this time, so why was it releasing its power again? With the previous experience, everyone urged their source chi and summoned their protective artifacts at the same time. However, the expected impact did not come. In the next moment, something that left everyone dumbfounded happened. The mountains and rivers Bell shook slightly and suddenly flew up, turned into a stream of light, and shot towards the starfield. In an instant, everyone was dumbfounded. No one knew who reacted first and shouted, "Hurry up and chase after it." As soon as the voice fell, this person took the lead in chasing after it. It was not easy to find a treasure left behind by the great emperors, so how could they let it go so easily? So, after this person moved, dozens of cultivators flew up one after another, turned into colorful lights, and chased after the mountains and rivers Bell. Yang Kai was no exception. Although he had many emperor artifacts, even giving one each to Liu Yang, Sister Hua, and the embodiment, who would complain about having too many emperor artifacts. Moreover, he had seen the great power of the mountains and rivers Bell with his own eyes, so he was even more interested in this emperor artifact. The power of this bell seemed to be even stronger than the annihilation thunder bead. He believed that Chi Hai was right. It was impossible to take away an emperor artifact without some kind of opportunity, especially since the mountains and rivers Bell had already gained sentience. If he wanted to take it, he must first obtain the approval of the artifact spirit. As long as he could obtain the approval of the artifact spirit, it would be much easier to take the mountains and rivers Bell. Yang Kai had encountered countless opportunities along the way, and he was confident that he would not lose to anyone when it came to luck, so he was still looking forward to taking the mountains and rivers Bell. What's more, Yin Lesheng, who he was looking for, had also chased after the mountains and rivers Bell, so he naturally could not let him go. But the moment he shot out, a strange feeling suddenly appeared in the depths of his heart. This feeling was indescribable and made him feel a little uneasy. This strange feeling made him a little uncertain, but when he tried to sense it carefully, he could not find any trace of it. And the faster Yang Kai flew, the stronger this feeling became. It was as if he would have a huge regret if he left this place like this. Kai Yang's brow furrowed, and he suddenly stopped. Although the mountains and rivers Bell made him envious, if he did not understand this feeling, he would not be in the mood to compete for it. A figure shot out from behind, apparently also chasing after the mountains and rivers Bell. Yang Kai fixed his eyes on it and found that it was Lan He. Seeing him stop, Lan He glanced at him strangely, but it seemed that she did not intend to pay attention to Yang Kai, so after taking a look at him, she decided to go around him. Just as the two passed by each other, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed and he stretched out his hand to pat Lan He's shoulder. Lan He's complexion changed drastically as her figure twisted strangely and she retreated to the side, but although her movements were fast, Yang Kai still managed to touch her clothes. "What are you doing?" Lan He shouted angrily with a sullen face. At the same time, she carefully scanned the area Yang Kai had just patted with her divine sense, trying to figure out what Yang Kai had done to her. But to her disappointment, no matter how she investigated, she could not find anything. Yang Kai smiled and said, "It's nothing, don't be nervous, I just wanted to persuade you not to chase. With so many people chasing after it, you definitely won't be able to snatch it. What does it have to do with you whether I can snatch it or not?" Lan He retorted with an unhappy expression. She thought to herself that this person was really interesting. She had only met him by chance, but he was always meddling in other people's business. Who knew what he was thinking? Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders and said, "I just wanted to persuade you. What to do, Miss Lan He can decide for herself." Lan He stared at him deeply. Then she said, "You're crazy." After that, she turned around and flew towards the starfield. If it weren't for the fact that time was running out, she would definitely teach Yang Kai a good lesson. This guy had been a bit indecent since the first time they met, and now he even dared to casually reach out to her. It was simply unreasonable. Unfortunately, She was too focused on the mountains and river's bell and was not in the mood to argue with Yang Kai. However, after this incident, her impression of Yang Kai was extremely bad. Looking at her gradually disappearing back, Yang Kai helplessly reached out and touched his nose. He didn't want to deliberately attack Lan He just now, but this woman just happened to be behind him. If it were anyone else, Yang Kai would have done the same. Chapter 2448. In the blink of an eye, everyone had run away. These masters seemed to be afraid that others would be one step ahead of them, so they spared no effort in chasing after the mountains and river's bell. Yang Kai, however, turned around and flew back towards the dark red stars. After a short while, he returned to the place where the mountains and river's bell was located and looked around solemnly. There was no one here, but the feeling that made Yang Kai feel uneasy came from here. It was for this reason that he did not chase after the mountains and river's bell like everyone else, but instead returned here to find out what was going on. A moment later, as if he had discovered something, Yang Kai's eyes lit up and he suddenly arrived at the original location of the mountains and river's bell. This place was originally a small mountain, but because of the vibration of the mountains and river's bell, the mountain had collapsed. At this moment, after the mountains and river's bell flew away on its own, this place was in a mess. However, at the original location of the mountains and river's bell, a unique scorching force was slowly dissipating. Previously, everyone's attention had been attracted by the mountains and river's bell, so no one had noticed the abnormality here. Yang Kai could not help feeling suspicious, wondering what was going on here. After thinking about it, he flew into the air and punched downwards. A few punches landed, and the ground was directly split open. Suddenly, a small pit appeared in his field of vision. An incomparably violent heat suddenly erupted, and at the same time, a rich source strength leisurely spread out, startling Yang Kai. Looking around, Yang Kai found that the pit was actually filled with boiling magma, and the scorching temperature even made Yang Kai pale. He did not dare to approach it easily. Fire attribute origin? Yang Kai's eyes flashed with surprise. Exclaiming in a low voice, a bold guess emerged in his heart. It was very likely that the fire attribute origin was hidden here. The reason he came to this stars was because Zhong Yong said that someone had found traces of the fire attribute origin here, but after coming here, the appearance of the mountains and river's bell made everyone so excited that no one thought about the fire attribute origin. But who would have thought that the fire attribute origin was hidden under the mountains and river's bell? It looked like the mountains and river's bell was suppressing it. No wonder dozens of Dao Source Realm cultivators couldn't sense the specific location of the fire attribute source even with their star seals. So this was the reason. When Yang Kai first came here, he had used his star seal to search for the location of the fire attribute source, but it was always vague and elusive, so he couldn't find it clearly. Now that he thought about it, it was definitely because of the mountains and river's bell. Now that the mountains and river's bell had flown away on its own, the fire attribute origin was immediately exposed. The source energy was hidden beneath the magma. It was also because of this fire origin that these stars were able to give birth to so many fire spirit herbs and produce such scorching hot lava. Thinking of this, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel excited. He felt that it was a wise decision to return to this place. There were so many people competing for the mountains and river's bell. It was impossible to decide who would get it in such a short time. But he was the only one who had discovered the fire attribute origin, so he could collect it at will. However, Yang Kai could only guess that the fire attribute origin was hidden under the magma. As for whether it was true or not, he had no way to judge. And even if it was true, he had never considered how to collect it. The fire attribute origin was not so easy to collect, and if he was not careful, it was very likely that he would be burned. Just as Yang Kai was at his wit's end, the magma in front of him suddenly began to boil, forming huge bubbles that then burst apart. That kind of unbearable heat actually became a lot stronger. Yang Kai couldn't help but urge his source chi to protect himself, and only then did he feel a little better. But the change in front of him made him very vigilant, and he took a few steps back. After a while, the magma in the entire pit seemed to be boiling, and then, a clear and loud bird's cry suddenly resounded through the world, echoing in Yang Kai's ears. Yang Kai was stunned. Because he was too familiar with this sound. Back when he was dual cultivating with Su Yang, when the dragon and phoenix auspicious manifestation appeared, the ice phoenix's cry was exactly the same, shocking everyone and making them submit. Huala. A beautiful fiery red figure suddenly flew out of the giant pit, and with its appearance, all the heat was transferred, and the magma in the pit turned to stone in an instant. The sky was suddenly covered by a huge figure, and a loud cry pierced the 9 heavens. Yang Kai looked up blankly, staring at the indescribably beautiful figure, gulping hard. Huafeng. There were divine spirits in this world, and the dragon and phoenix reigned supreme. The dragon race and the phoenix clan were both the most powerful existences among the divine spirits. This was almost indisputable. The dragon race aside, the phoenix clan had 2 major branches. The fire phoenix and ice phoenix. These 2 branches were in charge of the 2 extreme mysteries of ice and fire, bringing about the differentiation of cold and heat in the world. The divine spirit Luanfeng that Yang Kai had seen in Clear Jade Mountain outside Maplewood City was a kind of fire phoenix. The Luanfeng's world-extinguishing black flame was simply synonymous with destruction and disaster. Just a single breath of black flame had burned Clear Jade Mountain all year round, and it had not been extinguished until now. It had attracted countless cultivators who cultivated fire attribute secret arts and secret techniques to Clear Jade Mountain for seclusion. And this beautiful and huge figure in front of him was undoubtedly the most orthodox fire phoenix. Its bloodline was even purer than that of the Luanfeng. Yang Kai never expected that he would see a fire phoenix in this shattered star sea. And it was suppressed by the mountains and rivers bell. If the cultivator who came here had not found the mountains and rivers bell by chance and scared it away, this fire phoenix would probably still be in hibernation, never to see the light of day. No. Yang Kai's eyes suddenly shrank as he stared at the fire phoenix hovering in the sky, seemingly having found something wrong. Because he noticed that this fire phoenix did not have the slightest vitality, it could even be said that it did not have a body of flesh and blood. Everything about it was made up of pure energy, and when it appeared, Yang Kai could clearly feel the power of the fire attribute source from it. In an instant, Yang Kai suddenly understood and blurted out, "Phoenix true fire. How was this a divine spirit fire phoenix?" It was clearly the phoenix true fire. Combined with what Chi Hai had said before, Yang Kai immediately realized that this was the phoenix true fire left behind by the great emperors Yenwu after their death. In terms of value, it was not inferior to the mountains and rivers bell in the slightest. For some people, it was even a supreme treasure, an existence that nothing could compare to. But why would the mountains and rivers bell of the Yuan Ding great emperors suppress the phoenix true fire of the great emperors Yenwu? Didn't these 2 great emperors join forces to attack the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor in the past? Yang Kai was suddenly confused. He did not know what had happened during the war between the great emperors that year for such a thing to happen. However, it was useless for him to think too much about what had happened tens of thousands of years ago. Now that the phoenix true fire was in front of him, the mystery of this place had been solved. The fire attribute origin on these stars was actually the phoenix true fire, which was much more precious than an ordinary fire attribute origin. The phoenix true fire was the inheritance of the fire phoenix. The fire phoenix would die, but the phoenix true fire would never be extinguished. This true fire contained the experience and knowledge of the fire phoenix clan over hundreds of millions of years. No matter who obtained this phoenix true fire, they would soar to the sky. For Liu Yang, this thing was simply a rebirth. If Liu Yang could absorb and refine it, it was very likely that he would become another fire phoenix in the future. Screech! A loud cry rang out again, waking Yang Kai from his excited thoughts. Looking over, Yang Kai was shocked. He saw that the phoenix true fire in the sky had suddenly turned into a fist-sized fireball and was heading straight for him. At this moment, it could be said that Yang Kai was scared out of his wits. He was proud of his strength and even dared to fight with the ordinary people of the Emperor realm. However, in the face of this famous phoenix true fire that could burn all things in the world, he did not even want to touch it. If he was hit by it, he was afraid that he would be turned into ashes in an instant. Just as he was about to run away, a force suddenly surged out of his body uncontrollably. Immediately after, a deafening dragon roar rang out. Under the golden light, the power of the golden divine dragon hidden in Yang Kai's body seemed to be stimulated by the phoenix true fire and directly revealed itself behind Yang Kai. The huge dragon head stared with two eyes the size of a house. Under the cover of the golden light, it was insufferably cold. The roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix intertwined for a time, rising and falling one after another. The two great essences collided in the air, causing the void to collapse and the universe to collapse. A muffled groan suddenly came from not far away, seemingly affected by the aftermath of the collision. Yang Kai's eyes turned cold as he turned his head to look in that direction, but as far as the eye could see, he could not find anything. At this moment, he did not have the time to care about anything else. He was at the center of the collision between the two great divine spirit essences, and it was extremely difficult for him to hold on. If it were not for the protection of the golden divine dragon source, he would have already been crushed to pieces. Even so, his bones were creaking and his skin was cracking as golden blood continued to flow out, making him look extremely miserable. The flames grew more and more vigorous, but the golden light did not show any weakness. Between heaven and earth, there seemed to be only these two colors left. This was a confrontation without a physical body, a battle between the supreme overlords of the divine spirits. Under the surging source strength, Yang Kai was able to comprehend many things amidst the pain and gain great benefits. As time passed, the collision between the two great essences seemed to become even more intense. Yang Kai had no choice but to use his dragon transformation secret technique to cover his entire body with dragon scales, but even so, the impact caused his vitality to tumble and he constantly vomited blood, as if he could die at any moment. However, although he looked miserable, there was a look of ecstasy in his eyes. Because he found that in the center of the collision, in this short period of time, his comprehension of source strength and principle strength had risen to a new level, and some of the things that he had been unable to understand in the past suddenly became clear at this moment. He was actually looking forward to it. It would be good if this kind of collision continued. Chapter 2449. To Yang Kai's slight disappointment, the two supreme sources only collided for less than a cup of tea's worth of time before they suddenly stopped and retreated. However, he could feel that although the collision just now seemed to be evenly matched, in fact, it was the Phoenix True Fire that was slightly inferior. His golden divine dragon source seemed to be slightly stronger than the Phoenix True Fire. This discovery excited Yang Kai. At this moment, he gritted his teeth and urged his golden divine dragon source to wrap around the Phoenix True Fire. The Phoenix True Fire was caught off guard and was engulfed. It screamed in anger and struggled madly, its violent power terrifying to the extreme. Yang Kai quickly formed a seal with his hands and summoned the sealed world bead. The sealed world bead opened leisurely and directly sucked the Phoenix True Fire into the sealed world bead. Then, he mobilized the power of the sealed world bead to suppress the Phoenix True Fire. After doing all this, Yang Kai staggered a few steps with a pale face. He was sweating profusely, as if he had just been fished out of water. He hurriedly immersed his consciousness into the sealed world bead and checked the current situation of the Phoenix True Fire. He found that although it was struggling fiercely, it could not escape from the sealed world bead. Only then did he feel relieved. A feeling of exhaustion washed over him as Yang Kai fell to the ground on his butt. Taking something like the Phoenix True Fire into the small sealed world almost drained his spiritual energy all of a sudden. The consumption was even greater than taking 100 embodiments into his small sealed world, which showed just how heaven-defying this Phoenix True Fire was. It was just that things went so smoothly that he was a little surprised. He was just giving it a try just now. He did not expect to succeed so quickly. The credit for this was probably due to his golden divine dragon source. Without it suppressing the Phoenix True Fire, Yang Kai estimated that even if he had the sealed world bead, he would not have been able to take it away. How could one of the top supreme sources in the world be so easy to take away? A figure suddenly appeared from somewhere not far away, looking at the person sitting cross-legged on the ground with a pale face. Yang Kai, who was also pale, had a look of disbelief on his face. "Chi Hai. No one had expected that while everyone was chasing after the mountains and river's bell, Chi-Hai would actually use a concealment secret technique to quietly hide. However, when the two origin forces collided with each other, he was also slightly affected. Judging from his complexion, he seemed to have suffered some minor injuries. He probably knew that his whereabouts had been exposed, so he decided not to hide anymore. Instead, he revealed himself openly. He looked at Yang Kai with a complicated gaze, but he didn't step forward immediately, nor did he show any hostility. He just stood there quietly. Although Yang Kai was meditating to recover, he was still paying attention to Chi-Hai's movements. Chi-Hai's slyness was refreshing to him. If it wasn't for Chi-Hai's groan when he was injured, Yang Kai didn't expect that there was someone else here besides himself. The reason why Chi-Hai had secretly stayed behind was obviously because he had some unknown plans. Yang Kai guessed that it was most likely related to the Phoenix True Fire, or that Chi-Hai already knew that the Phoenix True Fire was suppressed under the mountains and river's bell, so he didn't chase after it. For a time, the two of them were speechless. The temperature of the dark red stars seemed to be dropping rapidly because the Phoenix True Fire had been taken away, and because of the difference in temperature, there was a continuous crackling sound. Half an hour later, Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes. After half an hour of meditation, although it wasn't enough for him to fully restore his spiritual energy, at least he wasn't as exhausted as before. Yang Kai still had the 7-colored soul-warming lotus which was constantly nourishing his soul, so there was no need for him to deliberately restore his spiritual energy. He turned his head and gave Chi-Hai a meaningful look. This guy had been standing here all this time, not disturbing his recovery, and had no intention of leaving. Yang Kai didn't know what he wanted to do. However, Yang Kai could see that he really didn't have any hostility. On the contrary, because of his shocking actions just now, there was a strong sense of dread in his eyes. Seeing Yang Kai looking at him, Chi-Hai's expression became solemn as he cupped his fists carefully and said, "This one is Chi-Hai. I think this friend should know this one. May I know this friend's name?" Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't hide his name because he wasn't very famous right now. He couldn't compare to the fame of the top disciples of the great sects, so it didn't matter if he reported his real name. "So, it's Brother Yang, nice to meet you." Chi-Hai cupped his fists again, puzzled in his heart. He kept recalling the names of the elite disciples of the great sects in the 4 territories of the star boundary, but he found that none of them matched Yang Kai's name. "Brother Chi-Hai, is there something you need?" Yang Kai asked lightly. Chi-Hai smiled awkwardly and said, "There is indeed something. This Chi has a presumptuous request." Yang Kai snorted and said, "Since it's a presumptuous request, don't bother." "Ah." Chi-Hai was suddenly choked speechless. He had only said that out of politeness, but he didn't expect Yang Kai to give such an unreasonable answer, leaving him helpless. "I'm a little curious." Yang Kai looked at Chi-Hai calmly. "Everyone else has gone after the mountains and river's bell, so why did Brother Chi-Hai quietly stay behind? Could it be that you already know something?" Now that he thought about it, Chi-Hai was knowledgeable. He knew many secrets that others didn't know. He was the one who had revealed the information about the great emperors, so it was understandable that he didn't say anything despite knowing some inside information. Chi-Hai raised his brow and instead of answering, he asked, "What about Brother Yang? You left and came back. Do you know something?" Yang Kai said lightly, "I just suddenly had a stomachache, so I came back to go to the toilet." Chi-Hai's face darkened when he heard this. Yang Kai continued, "Brother Chi-Hai has been hiding nearby all this time, so didn't you see that I made a big hole in the ground as soon as I came back? I was going to take care of it there, but I didn't expect something like that to happen." Chi-Hai's mouth twitched. Brother Yang is really lucky. He had a look of disbelief on his face, but Yang Kai didn't mind at all. He grinned and said, "Brother Chi, if you know something, why don't you tell me? It's already like this, so there's no point in continuing to hide it." Chi-Hai's face darkened slightly, looking a little lonely. After a long time, he sighed and nodded, "I do know something." Yang Kai's eyes lit up. "This one is listening." Chi-Hai said, "I know that the Phoenix True Fire is suppressed under the mountains and river's bell." Yang Kai asked curiously, "This matter puzzles me. Didn't the Yuanding Great Emperors and the Yenwu Great Emperors join forces to deal with the heaven-devouring Great Emperor? Why did the Yuanding Great Emperors use the mountains and rivers bell to suppress the Yenwu Great Emperor's phoenix true fire? Could it be that they are enemies? Qi Hai shook his head and said, Brother Yang is wrong. The Yuanding Great Emperors and the Yenwu Great Emperors are indeed companions, and they joined forces to deal with the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. There is actually another reason why they used the mountains and rivers bell to suppress the phoenix true fire. May I hear the details? Yang Kai's expression turned solemn. Qi Hai pondered for a moment and said, The heaven-devouring Great Emperors are omnipotent, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he is the strongest person in the star boundary. However, although he is one of the Great Emperors, he is not immortal. In his era, no one could surpass his cultivation, but he wants more. Brother Yang, take a guess, with his strength and status, what does he want? Yang Kai was not a fool, so how could he not guess after hearing Qi Hai's words? His eyes flashed and he exclaimed, Eternal life. Qi Hai nodded and said, Yes, the heaven-devouring Great Emperors want to live as long as heaven and earth, and shine as brightly as the sun and moon. Yang Kai sucked in a breath of cold air. What a big appetite. Qi Hai chuckled, You and I have not reached this realm yet. If you and I had the ability of the heaven-devouring Great Emperors, perhaps we would also consider this matter. However, how could it be so easy to achieve an immortal and indestructible body? It is said that there is a kind of treasure in this world that was formed at the beginning of heaven and earth before the chaos separated. That thing is called the immortal tree. Yang Kai's eyelids twitched slightly. Qi Hai continued, According to ancient legends, if one can obtain the immortal tree, they can achieve immortality. Yang Kai laughed loudly. Could it be that Brother Qi actually believes this kind of rumor? Qi Hai looked at him with a solemn expression. Why wouldn't I believe it? Yang Kai said in a deep voice, A tree can make a person immortal. This is only a lie to deceive children. Brother Qi Hai is a master, so don't believe such nonsense. Qi Hai shook his head. In this world, there are very few treasures, and every one of them has an incomprehensible and unimaginable effect. The immortal tree can indeed make a person immortal. Yang Kai put on a surprised look and said, Is this true? Then does Brother Qi Hai know how to use the immortal tree to achieve immortality? Qi Hai smiled bitterly, I don't know. How can the immortal tree be so easy to see? Since ancient times, there have been no more than 5 people who have seen it. Yang Kai thought to himself that this was nonsense. When he obtained the immortal tree, at least 6 or 7 people had seen it. However, Qi Hai actually didn't know how to use the immortal tree, which inevitably disappointed him. He had thought that with Qi Hai's profound knowledge, he might be able to inquire about some information about the immortal tree from him. After he obtained the immortal tree, Yang Kai had tried to refine it to achieve an immortal and indestructible body. But no matter how hard he tried, he found that he couldn't refine the immortal tree at all. At that time, he was only an origin returning realm master, so it could be said that his strength was too low, but now that he was in the third order Dao Source realm, he still couldn't refine it. The biggest role of the immortal tree today was to bring vitality to the small sealed world, allowing the spirit herbs in the medicine garden to grow faster and shorten their growth cycle. Yang Kai could occasionally use the rich vitality emitted by the immortal tree to heal himself, but other than that, it had no other effect. As for how to achieve an immortal and indestructible body, Yang Kai had no clue. Chapter 2450. Back then, for the sake of immortality, the heaven-devouring Great Emperor had once sought out the immortal tree. He had even broken through the passageway between worlds and visited countless star domains in the lower planes. Every time he visited a star domain, he would devour countless cultivation stars and plunge all living beings into misery and suffering. It was precisely for this reason that he had incurred the wrath of both man and God. Qi Hai said leisurely, but unfortunately, even the great emperors of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor couldn't find the immortal tree. Yang Kai felt a lingering fear after hearing this. He was sure that the heaven-devouring Great Emperor had never been to the Hung Luo starfield. If he had been there, he might have been able to find the immortal tree. However, His arrival would definitely bring an indelible disaster to the Hung Luo starfield. Chi Hai continued, since the immortal tree couldn't be found, the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor could only think of another way. It is rumored that the reason why the great emperors besieged the heaven-devouring great emperor in the shattered star sea was because his actions were intolerable to the great emperors of the world. In fact, this is only part of the reason. Yang Kai's expression changed, and he asked, what other reasons are there? There is another biggest reason, which is that he wants to attack another great emperor and steal something from that great emperor. Hearing this, Yang Kai's mind turned sharply, and as if he suddenly thought of something, he exclaimed, could it be? Chi Hai nodded and said, yes, it's exactly what Brother Yang thought. Great emperors would never fight if there was no irreconcilable enmity between them. However, the actions of the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor had undoubtedly touched the bottom line of all the great emperors. If they didn't pay attention to this kind of thing, then the next unlucky one might be them. Therefore, they joined forces and declared war against the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor. That battle was earth-shattering. The universe collapsed, and that was the shattered star sea. And what the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor wanted was the true phoenix fire of the Yenwu great emperor. Chi Hai's expression was solemn. The phoenix true fire is the inheritance of the fire phoenix. The fire phoenix will die, but the phoenix true fire will never be extinguished. It even has the heaven-defying divine technique of nirvana reincarnation. Therefore, the true fire of the phoenix was also known as the true fire of nirvana. It was the number one heavenly flame. The heaven-devouring great emperor wanted to obtain the true fire of the phoenix in order to comprehend the mystery of eternal life. If the heaven-devouring great emperor of the great emperors really got it, then he might really get what he wanted. In that battle, the Yenwu great emperor, who was heavily favored by the heaven-devouring great emperor, was the first to fall, and the true phoenix fire was also beaten out. In order to prevent the heaven-devouring great emperor from obtaining the true phoenix fire, the Yuanding great emperors used their mountains and rivers bell. Suppressing it was also a helpless move. Without the mountains and rivers bell, the strength of the Yuanding great emperors fell sharply, and they followed in the footsteps of the Yenwu great emperors. However, the mountains and rivers bell and the suppressed true phoenix fire were sent away by another great emperor in the chaotic battle. Since then, no one knows where they went. Over the years, countless cultivators have entered the shattered star sea in search of the treasures left behind by the great emperors, but very few people know that the true phoenix fire is suppressed under the mountains and rivers bell. After listening to Chi Hai's words, Yang Kai immediately understood why he had secretly stayed behind. He could not help but grin and say, Brother Chi Hai really knows a lot. Chi Hai said, this Chi has been paying attention to the news of the true phoenix fire for some special reasons, and has even looked up countless ancient books for this reason. Special reasons? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. Chi Hai cupped his fists and said, to be honest, this Chi's wife was seriously injured 20 years ago. She is unconscious, and although this Chi has tried his best to prolong her life, it is not a long-term solution. If you want to save her, in this world, apart from the immortal source liquid on the immortal tree, there is only the true phoenix fire. Yang Kai's face sank and he coldly snorted, Brother Chi Hai, are you looking for me to ask for the true phoenix fire? If so, then this Yang has misjudged you. I had a good chat with you just now, but I didn't expect Brother Chi to have such intentions. Farewell. Brother Yang misunderstood. Chi Hai hurriedly waved his hand. Can you listen to me one more time? Yang Kai looked at him coldly and said, I am not related to you, so why should I care about your trivial matters? Chi Hai was so anxious that sweat appeared on his forehead as he said, if Brother Yang is willing to help me, then this Chi is willing to pay any price. As long as Brother Yang asks, this Chi will definitely do it for you. Even if you have to die. Yang Kai grinned, revealing an evil smile. Chi Hai's expression changed slightly, but he soon smiled freely. If Brother Yang really saves my wife, this Chi will kill himself in front of you. Yang Kai was slightly moved, and the corner of his mouth twitched. You're crazy. Chi Hai smiled and said, I wonder if Brother Yang has ever met a woman that he could rely on in life and death and never leave. If you have, then you will definitely understand this Chi's feelings. A few beautiful figures suddenly flashed in front of Yang Kai's eyes, and he couldn't help but feel a little touched. He was thinking, if those people encountered such a situation, what would he do? Suddenly, he somewhat understood Chi-Hi's feelings. Although it's a pity, I can't give you the true phoenix fire. Yang Kai shook his head. The true phoenix fire was too precious, and he wanted to leave it for Liu Yang. He couldn't give it to him just because of Chi-Hi's words. Who knew if Chi-Hi was telling the truth? Even if it was true, he had no friendship with him. Chi-Hi said, "Brother Yang, you misunderstood. I don't want your true phoenix fire." Yang Kai frowned and said, "Then what do you want?" Chi-Hi replied, "I just want to know if it's convenient for Brother Yang to come with me. You only need to use the Nirvana divine technique of the true phoenix fire to save my wife without any loss to you. That's all." Yang Kai was surprised. "That's all?" Chi-Hi nodded seriously. Yang Kai pondered for a while and said, "What kind of injury did your wife suffer? Why does it have to be the true phoenix fire to save her life?" Chi-Hi's expression darkened and said, "Rather than an injury, it's better to say that she was poisoned by a cold poison. Outside the borders of our eastern territory is a vast desolate ancient land. Very few people set foot in that desolate ancient land, so opportunities and dangers coexist. Many masters in the eastern territory like to explore the desolate ancient land. My wife went there alone 20 years ago, and after a month, she returned with serious injuries and has been in a coma ever since. According to the diagnosis of my Chi family fort's alchemist, my wife was poisoned by the heavenly frost earth rain." Heavenly frost earth rain. Yang Kai's face changed and he cried out, "One of the 10 great poisons?" Chi-Hi looked at Yang Kai in surprise and said, "Brother Yang knows about the heavenly frost earth rain?" Yang Kai gently nodded, "I've heard of it." Chi-Hi smiled bitterly and said, "Since Brother Yang has heard of it and knows that it's one of the 10 great poisons, then you should know that there's basically no cure for it." "That's true." Yang Kai sighed. One of the 10 great poisons, if there was no cure, then it was basically waiting for death, unless one encountered some kind of treasure, such as the immortal tree. However, the Phoenix True Fire with the Nirvana Divine Technique may bring my wife a chance of survival. Chi-Hi looked at Yang Kai with burning eyes and said, "My main purpose in entering the Shattered Star Sea this time was to find the Phoenix True Fire. I originally wanted to bring it back to Chi family fort, but, after seeing what happened just now, this Chi realized that I was too naive. With my current strength, let alone subduing the Phoenix True Fire, I can't even get close to it." Chi-Hi had naturally seen Yang Kai's golden divine dragon source power erupting and fighting with the Phoenix True Fire, and that terrifying battle had made him tremble all over. "Brother Chi thinks too highly of me. I haven't subdued it, so I'm just temporarily suppressing it," Yang Kai explained lightly. "Suppressing?" Chi-Hi gulped. This sounded even more unbelievable than Yang Kai subduing the Phoenix True Fire. He murmured with admiration, "Brother Yang is really a god." Yang Kai frowned and said, "Although Brother Chi's feelings for sister-in-law are touching, please forgive this Yang for not being able to help." Chi-Hi's expression darkened. He knew that this kind of thing couldn't be forced. Yang Kai hadn't subdued the Phoenix True Fire yet, so even if he wanted to help, he couldn't. This was the truth. If Yang Kai wanted to save his wife, he had to refine the Phoenix True Fire first. Otherwise, once the Phoenix True Fire was summoned, not to mention saving someone, it would burn them to ashes in an instant. Then when Brother Yang has refined the Phoenix True Fire, can you go to Chi family fort in the Eastern Territory? Chi-Hi looked at Yang Kai with a pleading expression and said earnestly, "Now, this is the only way for my wife to survive. Brother Yang, rest assured that this Chi will never spread what I saw, or I will be struck by lightning." Chi family fort in the Eastern Territory? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "Yes. If it's the Eastern Territory, then I may make a trip there." Yang Kai nodded. This time, whether or not he could inquire about Xiao Xiao from Yin Lesheng, he had to make a trip to the Eastern Territory because Xiao Xiao was most likely in the Eastern Territory. "Really?" Chi-Hi was overjoyed when he heard this and said somewhat helplessly, "That's great. Right, Brother Yang, if you go to the Eastern Territory, just ask about the ancient wild lands, my Chi family fort is nearby." We'll talk about it when the time comes. Yang Kai didn't immediately agree. This kind of thing wasn't easy to promise, otherwise, if he didn't fulfill his end of the bargain, Chi Hai might hold a grudge against him. Chi Hai obviously understood this, but now that the initiative was completely in Yang Kai's hands, he couldn't force him. He could only take out a communication bead from his space ring and carefully hand it to Yang Kai. Brother Yang, this is this Chi's communication bead, it may be useful in the future. Yang Kai took it and threw it into his space ring, cupped his fists, and said, then let's part ways here. Chi Hai nodded with a complicated expression. Before Yang Kai could leave, Chi Hai suddenly said, Brother Yang, wait. What's wrong? Yang Kai looked back at him. Chi Hai said seriously, Brother Yang, do you want to chase after the mountains and rivers bell? Yang Kai grinned and said, how could I miss the treasure of the great emperors? I should at least give it a try. Chi Hai said, the Yuan Cauldron Great Emperor's Mountains and Rivers Bell is infinitely powerful. Basically, no one in the Dao Source realm can successfully subdue it unless they gain the approval of the artifact spirit and have it choose a master. Yang Kai heard this, flicked his hair, and said confidently, I'm so handsome, it should take a liking to me. Chi Hai's face darkened. Chapter 2451. Brother Yang, you are a dragon among men, but if you want to subdue the mountains and rivers bell, you can't just rely on your handsomeness. Chi Hai braced himself and said. Now that he had a favor to ask of Yang Kai, he couldn't speak too bluntly lest he upset Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression changed as he asked, does Brother Chi mean that you know how to subdue the mountains and rivers bell? I naturally don't know how to subdue it, but this Chi has a piece of information that I can provide to Brother Yang. Oh, let's hear it. Yang Kai immediately became interested. Chi Hai said, the world only knows that the mountains and rivers bell is the natal emperor artifact of the Yuan Ding Great Emperors, but they don't know that the mountains and rivers bell is actually not the Yuan Ding Great Emperor's artifact, but an ancient exotic artifact. Ancient exotic artifact. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Indeed. Chi Hai nodded and said, the Yuan Ding Great Emperors were able to become Great Emperors because they obtained the mountains and rivers bell. It can be said that the mountains and rivers bell made them famous as Great Emperors. There's such a thing. Yang Kai was surprised when he heard this. This was really a secret. If Chi Hai hadn't told him, he wouldn't have known about it. Otherwise, how could the mountains and rivers bell suppress the Phoenix True Fire? After suppressing it, even the heaven-devouring Great Emperor couldn't break its defenses. If it were an ordinary Emperor artifact, it would be impossible to suppress such a divine fire for tens of thousands of years. When Yang Kai heard this, he felt that this made sense. The Phoenix True Fire was extremely overbearing, but it was still suppressed by the mountains and rivers bell for tens of thousands of years. If the mountains and rivers bell hadn't flown away on its own this time, the Phoenix True Fire might not have been able to see the light of day again. Then what is the information Brother Chi is talking about? Yang Kai asked in a deep voice. Chi Hai's expression turned solemn as he said, according to ancient records. Back then, the great emperors of Yuan Ding had ventured deep into the savage, desolate ancient lands of the Eastern Territory. At that time, the Yuan Ding great emperors were only ordinary people in the emperor realm. They wanted to subdue the mountains and rivers bell, but they didn't know how to do so. In the end, they had to endure the 81 bell rings to gain the mountains and rivers bell's approval and bring it out of the savage, desolate ancient ground. The mountains and rivers bell actually came from the savage, desolate ancient ground. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Previously, he had heard Chi Hai mention the savage, desolate ancient ground, so he didn't pay too much attention to it. However, now that he heard that the mountains and rivers bell actually came from the savage, desolate ancient ground, he realized that it was an incredible place. He secretly decided that if he had the chance, he would go there and take a look. However, the great emperors of the Yuan Cauldron realm had actually withstood 81 rings of the bell to obtain the recognition of the mountains and rivers bell's spirit. It was truly amazing. Yang Kai had also experienced the power of the mountains and rivers bell. When the cultivator of the third order Dao Source realm came into contact with it at close range, he was shocked to death on the spot. He wasn't confident that he could withstand 81 rings of the bell. Chi Hai's words undoubtedly provided Yang Kai with a way to subdue the mountains and rivers Bell, but it was also extremely dangerous. Brother Yang, if you don't have the confidence and opportunity, I advise you not to pay attention to the mountains and rivers Bell. There are still many good things in the Shattered Star Sea. You and I can travel together. Not waiting for him to finish his words, Yang Kai interrupted him. I still want to go and have a look. Chi Hai's face darkened. He said, in that case, this Chi won't persuade you anymore. Brother Yang, be careful. Many thanks, Brother Chi. Until we meet again. Yang Kai grinned, and as he spoke, his figure leapt up into the sky. Chi Hai stood in place, staring at Yang Kai's back with a complicated expression. After a long time, he sighed heavily, found another direction, and left alone. He didn't have much of a friendship with Yang Kai. Yang Kai promised him that he would go to the Chi family fort in the Eastern Territory to take a look if he had the chance. If it were someone else, not only would they ignore him, they might even kill him to silence him. After all, Chi Hai had just witnessed Yang Kai suppressing and subduing the Phoenix True Fire. If this kind of thing were to spread, Yang Kai wouldn't have a good time in the future. It was because of this concern that Chi Hai took the initiative to swear that he would not tell anyone what he saw. However, he had no confidence that Yang Kai would go to the Chi family fort to find him. If Yang Kai didn't go, his wife would undoubtedly die, but even if Yang Kai went, his wife would only have a slim chance of survival. Yang Kai chased in the direction of the mountains and rivers Bell for half a day before suddenly sensing the soul imprint he had planted on Lan He. When Lan He had passed by him earlier, Yang Kai had deliberately patted her on the shoulder in order to plant a soul imprint on her so that he could track her. As for causing Lan his displeasure and suspicion, that was unavoidable. Without this soul imprint, Yang Kai certainly couldn't track the whereabouts of the mountains and rivers Bell. Flying in the direction of the soul imprint, Yang Kai finally saw Lan He somewhere in the void after another hour. However, what surprised him was that Lan He was fighting with someone at this time and was being besieged. Yang Kai fixed his eyes and found that the two people besieging her were from the Third Order Dao Source realm. Their cultivations were quite good. Lan He was fighting against two people by herself and looked quite embarrassed. She had suffered a lot of injuries and was stained with blood. Glancing around again, Yang Kai found that almost all of the dozens of cultivators who had appeared in the dark red stars were here. The mountains and rivers Bell stayed in the void, motionless. Everyone looked at the mountains and rivers Bell with greedy and covetous eyes, but no one came forward to compete for it, which made Yang Kai feel very strange. He didn't know what was going on. However, what made him feel a little relieved was that Yin Lasheng of the Netherworld sect was also here and hadn't left. This discovery made Yang Kai feel a little relieved. The Shattered Star Sea was extremely vast. If he lost Yin Lasheng here, he really wouldn't know where to find him. Almost everyone was waiting quietly in the void. Only Lan He was fighting with the two opponents, so as soon as Yang Kai came over, he attracted a lot of attention. Yin Lasheng also glanced at him faintly, but because Yang Kai was wearing a mask, he wasn't worried about being recognized. Don't come over. Just as Yang Kai rushed over, Lan He, who was fighting someone and had fallen into a disadvantageous position, suddenly shouted in Yang Kai's direction. Because of this distraction, two wounds immediately appeared on her body, causing blood to spurt out. Yang Kai looked at her in amazement. He didn't know why this woman had stopped him from approaching, especially when she was besieged. If it was because of his previous actions that made her feel disgusted, then it was a bit too sensitive. But soon, Yang Kai understood her intentions. As soon as he rushed over, he noticed the abnormalities around him. There was a natural spirit array hidden in the void, and it was extremely well hidden and dangerous. From the outside, he couldn't detect it at all. But as soon as he entered, he felt a sense of crisis and couldn't find a way out. No wonder no one acted rashly even though the mountains and rivers Bell was right in front of them. The place where the mountains and rivers Bell was located seemed to be the most dangerous place in the entire natural spirit array. After understanding this, Yang Kai's face darkened. Glancing around, Yang Kai saw that the several dozen cultivators around him were all looking at him with gloating expressions, their faces filled with ridicule. Yang Kai coldly snorted and shouted, "What are you looking at, a bunch of trash? Do you believe this young master won't gouge out your eyeballs?" He had accidentally rushed into this natural spirit array, so he was somewhat annoyed. Although it was normal for those people not to remind him, it was infuriating for them to take pleasure in his misfortune at this time. As soon as this remark came out, dozens of eyes were fixed on Yang Kai. Murderous intent instantly filled the air, causing the surrounding space to freeze. Which of the cultivator who came here wasn't an elite from a great sect? They had always thought highly of themselves, but now they were being called trash by Yang Kai. Who could bear it? What's more, Yang Kai had cursed everyone with just a few words. This was too lawless and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Many people looked at Yang Kai as if they were looking at a dead man. Yang Kai curled his lips, looking as if he didn't put these people in his eyes. He turned to Lan He and asked, "What kind of enmity do these two have with you? Why do you have to fight here?" Previously, only Lan He had warned him not to come over, and she was besieged, which made Yang Kai feel slightly moved. Naturally, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Lan He snapped, "Sect's enmity has nothing to do with personal enmity." The reason why she had called out to Yang Kai before was actually not to save Yang Kai's life. She just wanted Yang Kai to pass a message to her sect, informing them of her situation. If she died here, at least someone would know. But this idiot had actually rushed in. Now, he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Lan He found that ever since she met this guy, everything had gone wrong. It was as if he had cursed her. One of the two people besieging Lan He shouted, "Bitch, our sect's big brother has been castrated by you. From now on, this person is neither human nor ghost. How dare you say it has nothing to do with personal enmity?" As soon as he said this, everyone's expression became brilliant. They secretly sympathized with that inexplicable eldest senior brother. A man being castrated was such a tragic thing. Just thinking about it made people feel a chill in their crotch, and a cold wind blew past them. Lan He said coldly, "He used that thing to commit crimes, so he should be punished." The man said angrily, "With your appearance, no man in the world will be interested in you. I think you are jealous, so you did this to Big Brother." Another person also hooted, "That's right. As a woman, you don't have anything. I'm afraid you won't be able to taste a man for the rest of your life. If you don't believe me, you can try taking off your clothes now and see which man here is willing to take a second look at you." "This is a woman." Among the surrounding cultivators, one of them widened his eyes and asked in amazement, "I must have been blind. I thought she was a man. TSK, this woman is really interesting. Could it be that she was born in the wrong body? Haha, you don't understand. The more this kind of woman is, the more interesting it is to play with her. Hiss. Brother, you have such a strong taste." Chapter 2452. The noisy discussions coming from all directions made Lan He's face turn red, either from anger or something else. Although she was carefree and had a neutral appearance, she was still a woman after all. Being said such words in front of her, she was naturally very embarrassed and angry. Even if her temperament was not bad, at this moment, she was disturbed to the point that her mind was in chaos. Seeing this, the two cultivator besieging her looked happy and became even more ruthless. Lan He's strength was good, and although the two of them had the absolute upper hand, they still had to pay a certain price if they wanted to take her down. But at this moment, Lan He's state of mind was in chaos, and it was only a matter of time before she was defeated. At this moment, another person laughed and said, "Who in the entire Eastern Territory doesn't know the name of Heavenly Wolf Valley's big brother Lan He?" "Oh, sorry, I misspoke, it's Big Senior Sister, ha ha ha." This person's voice sounded familiar to Yang Kai. He turned his head and saw Brahma Holy Land's holy sons, Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian. The one who spoke was Zhong Hao, who had exchanged a blow with Yang Kai before. Listening to the meaning of his words, it was obvious that he knew Lan He, but he didn't have any friendship with her. They even had some disputes, so he decided to add insult to injury at this time. Heavenly Wolf Valley? Yang Kai raised his brow. He felt like he had heard the name of this great force before, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't remember. Then is she a man or a woman? Hurry up and let us see. Someone shouted and immediately echoed. Shut up. Yang Kai looked around coldly and sneered, a group of men. Is it fun to watch a woman being bullied? The person who had shouted angrily immediately shouted, Boy, who do you think you are? You were so arrogant just now, and now you dare to be so condescending? Do you dare to tell us your name? The others also glared at Yang Kai, extremely dissatisfied with his arrogant attitude. Yang Kai coldly snorted and ignored that person. Instead, he took a step forward and floated towards Lan He. Halfway there, he waved his 10 fingers and summoned hundreds of golden blood threads. In an instant, a golden light burst forth as the golden blood thread cut through the air. Although the two people besieging Lan He had not relaxed their attacks on Lan He, they were also vigilant of Yang Kai's movements. After all, this guy seemed to have some friendship with Lan He. Therefore, as soon as Yang Kai moved, the two of them reacted. One of them slashed towards Yang Kai and shouted, Boy, you're courting death. This saber strike was absolutely stunning. It was as if it was going to shatter the sky. The incomparably ferocious blade light made the world dim. The expressions of the onlookers changed one after another. Suddenly, the golden blood threads transformed into a giant golden net that enveloped the world and directly enveloped the saber wave. Hissing sounds could be heard incessantly, although the saber light was powerful. However, it was unable to break through the golden blood thread's defense and was immediately suppressed. On the contrary, the giant golden net did not give up. It pounced in front of the cultivator and slowly closed, as if it was going to wrap him up. The cultivator's expression changed greatly. Although he did not know what was strange about this golden net, the terrifying power fluctuations coming from it were not fake. How could he dare to let it touch him so easily? His figure flickered as he retreated. But in the next moment, his eyes suddenly widened, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Because Yang Kai, who was originally a few dozen meters away, had suddenly appeared in front of him. He actually approached him like a ghost and revealed a sinister grin. His white teeth glowed with a cold light, causing his hands and feet to turn cold and his entire body to shiver. He did not notice how Yang Kai had approached him. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, the two of them were already face to face. When their eyes met, the cultivator only saw the image of a white lotus bud suddenly appear in Yang Kai's left eye. The bud was spotless, pure and flawless, and disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, his knowledge sea shook violently, causing him to feel dizzy and almost lose his footing. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and punched, causing a burst of fist force to erupt. Catcher. At the same time, the sound of ribs breaking rang out and blood splashed out. The cultivator stood in place in a daze, his eyes bulging as he stared at Yang Kai in disbelief. Gasps could be heard from all around. Because everyone saw Yang Kai pounce in front of his opponent. They did not know what kind of secret technique or divine technique he used, but his opponent's expression instantly became pained. And as Yang Kai's punch blasted a large hole in the cultivator's chest, his arm going straight through. The eyelids of the people standing behind the cultivator twitched wildly. At this moment, Yang Kai was still holding a beating heart in his hand. It was so bloody that no one dared to look directly at it. He exerted a little force and the heart suddenly burst open. As the sound was heard, the cultivator whose chest was penetrated by him also tilted his head and stopped breathing. Gulping sounds could be heard, and many people finally looked at Yang Kai with a different expression. Even the strongest people present, who thought highly of themselves, had a serious expression on their faces. Killing a cultivator of the same level in the blink of an eye, and it seemed that he did not use his full strength, was something that few people present could do. Even if they could do it, they would need to use a powerful secret technique that also consumed a lot of energy. On the other hand, Yang Kai seemed to have just summoned a large golden net and then swung his fist. It was as simple as killing a chicken. It was not until this moment that everyone realized that the reason why Yang Kai was so arrogant and condescending was because he had the capital to back it up. It's him. Zhong Hao's eyes narrowed as he stared closely at Yang Kai, seemingly having discovered something. Who? Zhong Xian asked in a low voice. Zhong Hao said with a sullen face, if I'm not mistaken, this guy is the one who was with Yu Ying before. Zhong Xian was shocked. How is that possible? Wasn't that guy injured by you in one move? How can he be so strong? What's more, the two of them look different. He had a look of disbelief on his face. Zhong Hao said, the appearance can be changed, but the aura can't be changed. I felt it as soon as he attacked. This kid hid his strength well, and he definitely hid it before. But now that he is here, where is Yu Ying? Zhong Xian said with a sullen face, this boy is so ruthless. It seems that Yu Ying's fate is grim, Zhong Hao said worriedly, I hit this boy before, and I don't know if he will bear a grudge. If he attacks me. Speaking of this, his face turned slightly pale. As the holy son of Brahma Holy Land, he was not afraid of anyone in the Dao Source realm, but now that he saw Yang Kai's decisive and ruthless attack, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Zhong Xian's expression changed as he said, if Yu Ying really dies at his hands, we can send a message to Netherworld Sect. Yin Lisheng is not an easy person to talk to. Zhong Hao's eyes lit up when he heard this and he nodded, good, that's a good idea. While the two were secretly communicating, the battle on Lan He's side was also over. Although Lan He's appearance and figure were not very good, her strength was not to be underestimated. Previously, she was besieged by two people and was at a disadvantage, but now, Yang Kai had killed one of them with lightning speed, causing the other to be shocked and lose his mind. Lan He took the opportunity to counterattack and killed him quickly. Two rays of star seal light flew up, one for Yang Kai and Lan He, and the other two space rings were quickly divided up. After surviving a disaster, Lan He glanced at Yang Kai gratefully. No matter what reason Yang Kai had to help her, he had saved her life. If Yang Kai hadn't taken action, she would have died here sooner or later. At most, she would have dragged someone down with her before she died. Who was the one who asked this young master what he was before? Yang Kai turned his eyes and looked around, arrogantly shouting, come, 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 this young master will tell you now. The person who had spoken before didn't dare to stand up and had long since hidden behind the crowd, his eyes flinching as he trembled with fear. Friend, shouldn't you keep a low profile? Zhong Hao suddenly sneered, looked at Yang Kai, and said, could it be that you think you are invincible and don't put anyone here in your eyes? His words dragged everyone in, causing many people to be unhappy and glaring at Yang Kai. Although Zhong Hao was suspected of sowing discord, Yang Kai's attitude was really too much. So what if I don't put you in my eyes? Bite me if you have the gut. Yang Kai looked at Zhong Hao coldly, not knowing what he meant by jumping out at this time. Zhong Hao snorted coldly, but he didn't get angry. He just looked at Yang Kai with a cold smile. Where is my junior sister Yu Ying? Someone suddenly asked. Yang Kai frowned and looked at the speaker with a strange expression. Because the person who spoke was actually Yin Lisheng. This is interesting, I haven't gone to him yet, but he actually came to me first, and asked about Yu Ying as soon as he opened his mouth. How did he know that Yu Ying was with me? After all, he had changed his appearance. But soon, Yang Kai reacted and glanced at Zhong Hao meaningfully, realizing that Zhong Hao should have recognized him when he made a move just now. I haven't seen you for many years, I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent. Yin Lisheng looked at Yang Kai with some shock. Obviously, he already knew his true identity. After all, Zhong Zhenyong had sent him a message before, revealing some information to him. It was precisely because of this that Yin Lisheng was shocked. He could cultivate to the third order Dao Source realm because of the strong cultivation of his sect and the guidance of a good master. He didn't believe that Yang Kai also had such good fortune. If Yang Kai didn't have such conditions, but still cultivated to the same level as him, it meant that Yang Kai had a great opportunity. You're not bad either. Yang Kai sneered. Now that his identity had been exposed, there was no point in hiding it anymore, so he simply reached out and took off the mask from his face, immediately restoring his original appearance. Chapter 2453. Sure enough, it's you. Yin Lisheng's expression suddenly changed, as if he had just met an enemy, his eyes turning red as he gritted his teeth and said, "You're really lucky, not only did you survive that disaster, but you even managed to come to the Shattered Star Sea. Yang Kai looked at him coldly and quickly said, Yin Lisheng, I will only ask you one question. You'd better answer honestly, where did the puppet that was with me go? Yin Lisheng heard this and smiled slightly, who knows? Since it's your puppet, why are you asking me? Sure enough, he knows about Xiao Xiao. Yang Kai's heart moved. Although Yin Lisheng did not answer Yang Kai's question directly, Yang Kai could still see this from his tone and demeanor. Yang Kai's mind suddenly became fiery as he stared at Yin Lisheng with scorching eyes. It looks like you're not going to tell me. Yin Lisheng grinned, since you know, why bother asking for a rebuff? Very good. Yang Kai nodded, his aura becoming extremely dangerous in an instant, like a cheetah ready to pounce on its prey, making people shudder. Since you don't want to say it, this young master will beat you until you do. Yin Lisheng's face sank as he said, do you really think you are invincible? I dare not call myself invincible, but I have no problem pinching you to death. Yin Lisheng laughed angrily, why? Because you are a Star Master? What? Brother Yin, what did you just say? This boy is a Star Master. Aren't Star Masters only those cultivators who come from the territory of the lower planes? Could this boy be one? Hiss. It is said that Star Masters possess complete star source. They have a unique advantage in martial Dao cultivation. I don't know if the rumors are true or false. Upon hearing that Yang Kai was actually a Star Master, the surrounding cultivators suddenly burst into an uproar, all of them looking at him with fiery eyes, as if they were looking at a huge piece of delicious meat. After coming to the Shattered Star Sea, everyone had gone through untold hardships to search for source strength, but all they could find was some broken source strength. Although absorbing and refining it would be beneficial to one's cultivation, it was only a broken source after all. How could it compare to the complete source of stars? The complete source of stars allowed one to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth in a more comprehensive manner. This was something that a broken source of power simply couldn't compare to. It was said that a long time ago, there were also some complete stars in the Shattered Star Sea, but with the passage of time and the opening of the Shattered Star Sea over the years, those complete stars had long been taken away by the ancestors, leaving behind some broken origin powers. Perhaps after a few more years, even the shattered source strength in the Shattered Star Sea would no longer exist. At that time, the Shattered Star Sea would lose its current purpose and attraction to the cultivator. This was why everyone reacted so strongly when they heard that Yang Kai was the Star Lord. Yin Lisheng laughed and said, this boy is indeed a Star Master, this Yin can guarantee this. Hearing this, everyone looked at him strangely. Lan He coldly snorted and said, it's really funny, the people of the Netherworld sect actually still have integrity. Previously, Yang Kai had saved her life, and now that Yang Kai was about to be targeted, she couldn't help but speak up. Naturally, she stood up and spoke up for Kai Yang. It seemed that she wanted to advance and retreat with him. Yin Lisheng's face sank as he looked around and said, if you don't believe me, you can ask him what his cultivation was 7 years ago. A tall and sturdy man immediately looked towards Kai Yang and said in a booming voice, little brat, if you hear this, then quickly answer. Although Yang Kai had killed a cultivator of the same level with a single move, which was very frightening, he was still alone. At this moment, with so many people staring at him, no matter how powerful he was, he wouldn't be able to make any waves. Yang Kai heard this and glanced sideways at the burly man. He coldly snorted and said, it's none of your business. He didn't put the burly man in his eyes, which made the burly man's face turn livid. Yin Lisheng smiled and said, 7 years ago, he was just a second-order origin king. Brother Yang, do I remember him clearly? Second-order origin king. How is this possible? Cultivating from the second-order origin king to the third-order Dao source realm in 7 years. Ayaya, how could such a thing be possible? Brother Yin, you're not lying to us, are you? In 7 years, a person could cultivate from the second-order origin king to the third-order Dao source realm. Such progress was simply terrifying. With so many people present, compared to their current cultivation 7 years ago, it was at most a small improvement, or no improvement at all. Yin Lisheng said, what good would it do me to lie to you? He may have had some other opportunities to reach this level, but his status as a Star Master is his greatest advantage. I've long heard that the warriors from the lower starfields are all geniuses, especially the Star Lords. Their cultivation speed is as fast as flying. If Brother Yin is right, then I've really learned something today. You believe the words of a Netherworld sect disciple? This Yin Lasheng clearly has a grudge with that guy, so he deliberately pointed out that he is a Star Master. He clearly wants to borrow a knife to kill him, then I'll admit it. Who doesn't want a complete Star's source? If one can obtain it. Whispers could be heard all around. Yang Kai sneered and glanced sideways at Yin Lasheng. Why are you only talking about me? Why don't you talk about yourself, Brother Yin? 7 years ago, you were just a third-order origin king, right? Yin Lasheng smiled lightly and said, so what if I was? As soon as this statement came out, many people were shocked and turned to look at Yin Lasheng. Yang Kai had cultivated from the second-order origin king to the third-order Dao source realm in 7 years, which was amazing enough, but Yin Lasheng's progress was not much worse than his. Compared with these two, everyone felt that they were simply mediocre. Yin Lasheng said generously, there's no harm in telling you that this Yin is actually a Star Master, so I can deeply understand how fast a Star Master can cultivate. As soon as his voice fell, everyone turned to look at him with fiery eyes. Yin Lasheng coldly snorted and said, but I am different from this little brat. This Yin is the legacy disciple of my sect's sect master. If you want to touch me, you should think twice. Hearing this, many people's expressions flickered, but after a while, many slowly shook their heads and looked away from Yin Lasheng. Yin Lasheng was indeed very attractive as a Star Master, but he was the legacy disciple of the Netherworld sect's sect master, so he must have a lot of life-saving cards in his hands. If they really fought a life-or-death battle with him, it was likely they would go for wool and come home shorn. On the contrary, Yang Kai seemed to be easier to deal with. However, it was also because Yin Lasheng admitted that he was a Star Master that his previous words were more convincing, and the eyes of these people looking at Yang Kai became more and more fiery. Yin Lasheng laughed and said, Yang Kai, there is a path to heaven but you don't want to walk, there is no door to hell but you insist on barging in. Today, with so many heroes here, let's see where you can run. Yang Kai's face became sullen as he scolded, you want to kill with a borrowed knife? Shameless. Who told you to have a complete Star Master's star source? Yin Lasheng didn't care and shouted, everyone, my Netherworld sect has a secret technique that can completely strip a Star Master's star source from a Star Master without the slightest loss. If any of you can capture this person, you can ask this Yin for help to strip his star source. This Yin promises to do his best and will not have the slightest selfishness. Haha, with Brother Yin's words, I can rest assured. I was just thinking about how to snatch this boy's star source even if I killed him, but it turns out that the Netherworld sect has such an amazing secret technique. The big man who had been scolded by Yang Kai earlier laughed loudly. Yin Lasheng said, this person's strength is extraordinary. If you want his Star Master's star source, it's best to join forces. He was blatantly encouraging everyone to join forces to deal with Yang Kai. Although everyone present didn't like his approach, with the temptation of star source in front of them, they couldn't help feeling a rush of excitement. What's more, Yang Kai's previous arrogant and domineering attitude was really infuriating. In an instant, dozens of auras locked onto Yang Kai, and the pressure was almost suffocating. Lan He, who was standing next to Yang Kai, turned pale and frowned. Although she was also quite strong, she had never been enemies with so many people before, so she couldn't help feeling a little uneasy. Feeling that her future was uncertain, she quietly glanced at Yang Kai. Looking around, Lan He couldn't help feeling surprised. Because Yang Kai was standing there calmly, without the slightest fear or timidity. The dozens of auras that had locked onto him were like a spring breeze, not deterring or affecting him in the slightest. This person's mental fortitude is quite strong. Lan He was secretly horrified. Previously, she didn't like Yang Kai very much. She always felt that this guy was strange and wasn't a good person, but after Yang Kai saved her life, her impression of Yang Kai somewhat changed. After all, so many people were just watching the show, but only he had pulled out a sword to help. She was also not related to him, so for him to do this, it was obvious that he was a warm-hearted person. Now that the situation had changed, and it was Yang Kai's turn to be targeted, Lan He naturally couldn't just stand by and watch. Just as she secretly made up her mind to help Yang Kai suddenly whispered, "Miss Lan, you leave here first." Hearing this, Lan He frowned and shouted, "What's wrong? Brother Yang, are you looking down on me, Lan He?" Yang Kai was stunned and looked at her. "When did I mean that?" Lan He snorted and said, "Then what do you mean by driving me away? Since you pulled out a sword to help before, Lan He, naturally can't just sit back and watch. Don't worry, if they really dare to bully you with numbers, I will help you. I will never hold you back." Yang Kai looked at her in a daze and said, "You will die." Lan His tender body trembled slightly, but she still firmly said, "If I die, then I die. In any case, I'm not leaving." A strange light flashed in Yang Kai's eyes as he looked Lan He up and down a few times, as if he wanted to get to know her all over again. Suddenly, he showed a look of realization and said, "Miss Lan He is from Heavenly Wolf Valley?" "Yes." Lan He nodded and replied. She didn't know why Yang Kai was asking this at this moment of life and death. This person was strange enough. Chapter 2454. I remember Heavenly Wolf Valley. Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, "When this matter is over, I have something to ask of Sister Lan. I hope Sister Lan won't refuse." Lan He said bitterly, "If I can survive, as long as it's not too excessive, I will promise you anything." "Don't worry, I won't die," Yang Kai laughed. Lan He looked at him strangely, not knowing where he got the confidence to say such big words. Was he blind? Couldn't he see that he was surrounded by dozens of Dao Source Realm cultivators? These Dao Source Realm cultivators were not ordinary cultivator, they were all elite disciples of great sects. If they joined forces, the average cultivator from the Emperor Realm would not be their opponent. Did he think he was more powerful than those from the Emperor Realm? "Little brat, you still dare to boast shamelessly," the big man suddenly shouted angrily. With a flick of his wrist, an axe suddenly appeared in his hand. Energy surged, and his imposing manner was extraordinary. He said, "If you know what's good for you, obediently surrender and we may leave your corpse intact. If you dare to be stubborn, pay." Yang Kai opened his mouth and spat at the big man like an arrow from a bow. The big man, who was clamoring, changed his expression drastically and quickly dodged to the side. Although this spit was not very lethal, it would be too disgusting if it hit him. After regaining his footing, the big man said with an ashen face, "Are you a child? How dare you spit at me? Do you have any shame?" Yang Kai sneered, "So many of you are eyeing me covetously. You don't even have to talk about shame, but I just spat at you and you think I have no shame? Ridiculous." Yin Lasheng snorted, "Don't talk nonsense. You will die today. Is that so?" Yang Kai looked at him coldly. He lifted his foot. Taking a step forward, he said majestically, "Then this young master wants to see which blind fool dares to make a move against me. This young master will tell you first, if anyone dares to make a move, I will make you all die here." As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed and they all looked dignified. The amazing cultivation that Yang Kai had displayed before was still vivid in his mind. Therefore, at this moment, although his words were somewhat alarmist, it still made people somewhat fearful. They were afraid that this guy would risk his life and fight to the death. For a moment, the dozens of people were all stunned in place. They were not willing to be the ones who stood out. They only wanted to wait for others to make the first move and then reap the benefits. Yin Lasheng also saw this and his face sank as he shouted in a low voice, "Since all of you are so cowardly and afraid of getting into trouble, why don't all of you take action?" Then after this Yin snatches his source energy, "Don't be jealous." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly waved his hand and shouted, "Netherworld Purgatory Hand." A gust of cold wind blew, and a burst of ghastly wails and howls suddenly sounded, and a huge ghost shadow suddenly appeared. He rushed towards Yang Kai with a ferocious expression. The ghostly figure had yet to arrive. Kai Yang felt a chill run down his spine, as if even his blood had been frozen. Before he had time to make a move, Lan He, who was standing beside him, suddenly shouted, "Heavenly wolf howls at the moon." A wolf's howl suddenly rang out, accompanied by Lan his finger pointing forward. A vigorous silver wolf figure appeared out of thin air. It was huge, like a heavenly wolf, and it opened its bloody mouth and bit towards the ghostly figure. In an instant, these two strange creatures collided, setting off a frenzy of battle. At the same time, Yin Lisheng made his move. Several Netherworld sect disciples around him also took action. Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian of Brahma Holy Land glanced at each other and quickly formed hand seals, seemingly using some kind of secret technique. When the others saw that someone had taken the lead, they no longer just watched from the sidelines and summoned their artifacts, cast their secret techniques, and bombarded Yang Kai. For a moment, the void lit up with colorful lights as energy fluctuated wildly. Lan, his face suddenly turned pale as she stood in place in a daze, her eyes dim as if they had lost their luster. With so many Dao Source Realm Masters attacking at the same time, she could not resist no matter what. What awaited her was only the call of death. At this moment, Yang Kai suddenly let out a long roar. With a flash of brilliance, a large long sword appeared in his hand as Emperor aura filled the air. He stood in place, as firm as a mountain, as he slowly rotated the long sword while chanting, "A million swords, one man holds the pass." Asterisk Kai 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 Kai. Asterisk countless sword waves burst out, like a swarm of locusts, heading towards the opposite side. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly as the scene of energy colliding was shocking, causing everyone's heart to tremble. An Emperor artifact. Where did this boy come from? He actually has an Emperor artifact in his hand. Don't let him go, kill him. Although many of the cultivator who entered the Shattered Star Sea were the elite disciples of various sects, or even the descendants or direct disciples of sect masters and elders, Emperor artifacts were still rare for them. Except for a few people who had Emperor artifacts, no one else was qualified to possess one. At this moment, seeing that Yang Kai actually took out an Emperor artifact, the dozens of cultivators suddenly became excited. In their opinion, Yang Kai was simply a huge treasure trove. Not only did he have a complete star's source, but he also had an Emperor artifact. If they could kill him and snatch his things, they would become rich overnight and become someone with an Emperor artifact. For a moment, everyone's heart was burning with excitement. After a series of collisions, Yang Kai also staggered back as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Although he relied on the power of Myriad's sword to barely resist the joint attack of the dozens of cultivators, he was only one person after all. How could he compete with so many people? To be able to do this, it was all thanks to those people not using their full strength at the beginning. Otherwise, Yang Kai would have suffered more than just minor injuries. Damn it, you really dare to attack together. Yang Kai looked forward with a pale face as he gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Yin Lisheng snorted, "It's too late to beg for mercy now. You will die today." Zhong Hao hurriedly said, "Quickly hand over that Emperor artifact." Although the others did not speak, the greedy light in their eyes had already explained their thoughts. Yang Kai grinned ferociously as his figure flickered and suddenly appeared in front of the mountains and river's bell. Yin Lisheng's face changed as he cried out in shock, "What are you doing?" Yang Kai laughed, "What am I doing? Isn't it obvious? I told you before that if anyone dares to attack me, I will make you all die without a burial place." His cold eyes swept across the crowd as a crazed look appeared on his face. "Are you crazy?" Yin Lisheng seemed to be aware of Yang Kai's intentions and his face suddenly turned pale. The others also turned pale with fright as their legs went soft. Yang Kai's face was cold and his eyes were cold as he said in a cold voice, "You forced me to do this." Saying so, he suddenly raised the Myriad's sword in his hand high. "Wait, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. Why do you have to do this?" Zhong Hao shouted in horror. "It's too late to say anything now. Die for me." Yang Kai shouted as the Myriad's sword in his hand smashed down on the mountains and river's bell. "It's over." Seeing this, Yin Lisheng's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he turned around and rushed out without looking back. "Run!" Zhong Hao also shouted. "This brat is crazy." Asterisk Hong. Asterisk the Myriad's sword slammed into the mountains and river's bell, causing a dull bell sound to explode as a sound wave visible to the naked eye swept out in all directions. Yang Kai was the first to bear the brunt. Even though he desperately circulated his source chi to protect himself, he could not help but sway and almost fainted on the ground, coughing up a mouthful of blood. The dozens of Dao Source realms who had their backs to Yang Kai and wanted to escape from this place did not fare any better. This place was a natural spirit array, so after falling into it, they could not find a way out at all, so even though they desperately tried to escape, it was useless. When the sound wave hit them, they were immediately sucked into it. Previously, on the dark red stars, a young man was killed on the spot just by touching the mountains and rivers bell lightly. Now, Yang Kai was using an emperor artifact to strike the mountains and rivers bell, causing an incomparable backlash. After the sound wave, everyone coughed up blood, and even the light of their defensive artifacts dimmed a lot. Not only that, the sound wave seemed to have a suppressive and sealing power. After it swept out, everyone was frozen in place, as if they had fallen into a swamp, unable to move at all. Hong. Before they could catch their breaths, another loud sound rang out. Everyone's heart trembled as they turned their heads to look, only to see Yang Kai actually holding the Emperor artifact and striking the mountains and rivers bell again with a ferocious look on his face as he laughed maniacally. Are you happy? Are you happy? Tell me loudly, are you happy, Tilda, or not? Madman. Madman. This guy has already lost his mind. You bunch of trash, how could you think of provoking him? Now, you're all going to be buried with him. Stop, let's talk nicely, don't do this, I beg you. Brother Yang, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Instead of everyone dying together, why don't we sit down and talk? Seeing the terrifying sound wave sweep over again, everyone cried for their fathers and mothers. All of them were filled with hatred in their hearts, but they had no choice but to say something against their will with a smile on their faces. I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. Yang Kai coughed up blood and shook his head, raising the myriad sword for the third time and declaring, I've made a profit by dragging so many of you down with me. Today, none of you will leave here alive. Lord Yang, I'm willing to offer you my space ring, please spare my life. Someone suddenly shouted. Yang Kai's hand movement paused as he sniffed and shouted righteously, Do you think this young master is the kind of person who only cares about money? Don't look down on me and humiliate this young master's character. The person was stunned, not knowing how to respond. Yang Kai said in a deep voice, What good things are in the ring? Everyone, the person who spoke was also stunned, not knowing what Yang Kai meant. It was only when a cultivator next to him quietly kicked him that the person realized and hurriedly said, There are many good things, a lot of them, I guarantee that Lord Yang will be satisfied. Yang Kai immediately beamed and said, Wouldn't it have been better if you said that earlier? Why did you have to suffer? Tell me, aren't you a cheap wretch? Yes, I'm a cheap wretch. The corner of the person's mouth twitched. Chapter 2455. Since that's the case, I'll spare your dog life. Yang Kai coldly snorted before turning to Lan He and saying, Sister Lan, go and get his space ring. Me? Lan He was taken aback. Although she felt that this was not a good idea, she also knew that Yang Kai was in some inconvenience now, so she could only nod and fly to the cultivator and extend her hand to him. The cultivator took off the space ring with a pained expression and reluctantly handed it to Lan He. Yang Kai shouted with a sullen face, Who still wants to buy their life? If you want to buy it, hurry up, you won't have this chance anymore. Isn't this looting a burning house? Boy, don't go too far. There are several dozen of us here, so we may not be afraid of you. I advise you to quit while you're ahead. Yes, Brother Yang, you should be lenient when possible. Leave some leeway so that we can meet again in the future. Be lenient when possible. Yang Kai sneered and said contemptuously, I didn't see any of you sparing me just now, but now you're talking nonsense, what's the use? I'll say it one last time, whoever wants to buy their life, hurry up and cooperate, otherwise, don't blame this young master for being ruthless and killing all of you here. Saying so, he raised the myriad's sword high again, as if he was about to strike. The several dozen Dao Source Realm cultivators all had ugly expressions on their faces. Yang Kai had only rung the mountains and rivers bell twice just now, but most of the cultivators had already been injured. Unfortunately, inside this natural spirit array, They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. If Yang Kai had rung the mountains and rivers bell a few more times, they might really all die here. Don't compromise. The weaker you are, the more he will take a yard after taking an inch. Never compromise with him. Everyone, join hands and fight him. We may not necessarily lose our lives. Yin Lisheng suddenly shouted. Among everyone, he didn't want to see Yang Kai show off like this, so when he saw that someone wanted to compromise, his eyes immediately turned red. Brother Yin, you're really unyielding. Yang Kai looked at him and sneered. Then this young master will wait and see. Let's see how long you can be so stubborn. Yin Lisheng's face was so gloomy that a layer of frost could be scraped off from it. Changing the topic, Yang Kai said in a low voice, I will only count to 3. After 3, if you still don't cooperate, then all of you can go to hell. 1. 2. Not waiting for Kai Yang to count out 3 words, someone had already shouted out. Brother Yang, I'm willing to hand over my space ring. Please let me live. Very good. Yang Kai's eyes turned to the person who spoke and said, take out your ring and stand aside. Lan He silently walked in front of that person and stretched out her hand. After the man handed over his space ring, he immediately flew to the side. I'm also willing to hand over my space ring. Me too. Fine, fine. There was nothing good anyway. It's better than dying here. In an instant, taking out space rings to buy their lives became the general trend. Soon, more than half of the dozens of cultivator chose to hand over their space rings. Lan His mood was extremely complicated. She thought she was going to die this time. After all, she had to fight against dozens of Dao Source Realm cultivators. How could she have a chance to survive? But the situation turned around. She and Yang Kai, who should have been at an absolute disadvantage, were now leading the dozens of cultivator by the nose. All of this was too sudden. It was all thanks to Yang Kai alone. In the face of dozens of Dao Source Realm cultivators, being fearless was a sign of bravery. Cleverly using the power of the mountains and rivers bell to deter the enemy, making the enemy unable to advance or retreat was a sign of strategy. It was the first time Lan He had encountered such a brave and resourceful person. In a short while, she had collected more than 20 space rings. Even though she was the great senior sister of Heavenly Wolf Valley and had seen a lot of big scenes, at this moment, she was trembling with excitement. The more than 20 space rings were heavy and extremely heavy. These were the space rings of the elite disciples of various sects. Each of them was extremely rich. She could hardly imagine how much wealth would be gathered from more than 20 space rings. After a while, the originally hesitant cultivator did not dare to delay any longer. The Emperor artifact in Yang Kai's hand had been placed in front of the mountains and rivers bell. Who knew when he would strike it again? One by one, they could only take off their space rings in humiliation and hand them to Lan He. They secretly swore in their hearts that they would teach Yang Kai the consequences of offending them one day. The dozens of Dao Source Realm cultivators who had gathered together were now divided into 2 groups. One group was those who handed over their space rings, while the other group was still stubborn. There were not many stubborn people in the group, only 5 or 6. Yang Kai looked around and found that these people were from Netherworld Sect and Brahma Holy Land. He sneered at Zhong Hao. It seems that Holy Son Zhong Hao wants to die here. Zhong Hao frowned and said, Brother Yang, how about we make a deal? If you let me and Zhong Xian go, we will remember today's kindness and repay it generously in the future. In the future, Yang Kai sneered and said with a cold face, we can talk about the future. Today, I only want your space rings. Zhong Hao said, Brother Yang, why do you have to do this? You have offended at least 20 sects. Will you still have a foothold in the star boundary in the future? Yang Kai heard this and nodded deeply. Brother Zhong Hao is right. I haven't thought about this yet. Zhong Hao was overjoyed, but before he could say anything, Yang Kai said, You mean, you want me to kill them after I take their things? TSK, Brother Zhong Hao is so vicious. You really can't judge a book by its cover. As soon as he said this, the faces of the cultivator who had handed over their space rings changed drastically and they glared at Zhong Hao. Zhong Hao wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and hurriedly said, Brother Yang, you misunderstand. How could I encourage Brother Yang to do such a thing? Wouldn't that ruin Brother Yang's good reputation? I just want to say that having more friends is better than having more enemies. Brother Yang, what do you think? You want to be friends with me? Yang Kai smiled slightly. Zhong Hao cupped his fists and said, Brother Yang, if you don't mind, hey, I don't, and you don't have the qualifications. Yang Kai's face turned cold as he stared at him. The smile on Zhong Hao's face suddenly stiffened and his face turned red. He was embarrassed to the extreme. He was the holy son of Brahma Holy Land. Even in the entire Star Territory, he was a leader of the younger generation. Who didn't he have the qualifications to be friends with? Yang Kai was just a Dao Source Realm cultivator, yet he dared to boast so shamelessly. What's more, he was spitting on him in front of so many people. How could he step down from this? He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Zhong Xian, who was standing to the side, also had an ugly look on his face. He and Zhong Hao were both holy sons, so when Yang Kai slapped Zhong Hao's face like this, he also felt his face burning, as if he had been slapped hard. Brother Yang, do you really have to be so stubborn? Zhong Hao said coldly. Yang Kai snorted and said, if you keep talking, this young master will take your dog life first. Good, we will remember today's matter. I hope you can still be so arrogant when we meet again in the future. Zhong Hao threw down these words fiercely before he and Zhong Xian took off the space rings on their hands and threw them to Lan He. Then, they turned around and walked towards the crowd. Yang Kai curled his lips and said, what's the use of only talking tough? If you have the guts, come and fight with this young master. Let this young master teach you how to behave properly. Zhong Hao's figure paused. He was almost provoked by Yang Kai to turn around and attack. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he suddenly remembered the scene of Yang Kai instantly killing a cultivator of the same level. He knew that he was no match for such terrifying strength. Even if he joined forces with Zhong Xian, they would only be able to maintain a stalemate at best. Another cheap bastard who wants to be humiliated by this young master before he is willing to cooperate, Yang Kai sneered. Zhong Xian suddenly turned around and looked at Lan He. Sister Lan He, although I don't know what your relationship with Brother Yang is, you have to be careful. Before, Zhong Hao and I saw him in a room with Netherworld sect's Yu Ying. That Yu Ying came out of a flight-type artifact in disheveled clothes. I think you know better than me what kind of woman Yu Ying is. We are all disciples of the Eastern Territories sects, so I don't want you to become the demon race's pawn. Yang Kai heard this and his face sank. You dare sow discord. This young master and that Yu Ying are pure and innocent, so don't ruin my reputation. Zhong Xian chuckled and said, that's what Yu Ying said before. After saying so, he walked into the crowd without looking back. Lan He frowned slightly and glanced at Yang Kai with a strange expression. Yang Kai said, Sister Lan He, you don't believe it, do you? Lan He said, Brother Yang's matter has nothing to do with me as long as he has a clear conscience. Yang Kai thought for a moment and nodded, that's true. After saying so, he turned to look at Yin Lasheng and said with a fake smile, Brother Yin, now there are only a few of you left. Do you want to cooperate, or cooperate? The remaining 3 people were all disciples of Netherworld sect. Yin Lasheng's status in Netherworld sect was extremely high. After all, he was the sect master's direct disciple, so even though he had only been in the sect for a short time, he was still the one in charge. Since he didn't express his position, the remaining 2 couldn't make a decision. Yin Lasheng smiled proudly and said, this Yin hates it when others threaten me. Anyone who threatens me doesn't have a good end. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he said, what a coincidence, Brother Yin and I are the same in this regard. Yin Lasheng said, arrogant people always have many things in common. Yang Kai, if you really want my space ring, then fight me. If you can beat me, this Yin will hand over the space ring with both hands. You want to fight me one-on-one? Yang Kai narrowed his eyes at him. Brother Yang, you don't dare? Yin Lasheng sneered. Yang Kai snorted and said, since Brother Yin is so refined, then this young master will give you a chance. As soon as this remark came out, Yin Lasheng's face lit up. Although the strength Yang Kai had shown before was extraordinary, Yin Lasheng had full confidence that he could remain invincible. This was why he could speak so confidently when facing Yang Kai, and even when falling into this natural spirit array, he didn't panic. If he wanted to leave here, he could do so at any time, but the price he would have to pay was a bit high. Unless it was a last resort, he wasn't willing to do so. Chapter 2456. Yin Lesheng had thought that a treacherous person like Yang Kai would definitely not agree to his challenge, and at that time, he would be able to ruthlessly humiliate Yang Kai and vent the resentment in his heart, but he hadn't expected Yang Kai to actually agree. This made him ecstatic. In a head-on fight, he wasn't sure if he was Yang Kai's opponent, but he still had a trump card. Once he used it, Yang Kai would die without a doubt. Yin Lesheng secretly made up his mind that when he fought Yang Kai, he would directly use his trump card and not give Yang Kai the slightest chance to resist. Just as his mind was racing, Kai Yang suddenly pointed his finger towards the several dozen people beside him and said, "Since Brother Yin likes to fight alone so much, then why don't you challenge this group of friends? I believe they will definitely accompany you to have some fun." Yin Lesheng was stunned when he heard this. The dozens of cultivator also looked stunned. Lan he was also stunned. Zhonghao's face turned cold as he quickly said, "Yang Kai, don't go too far. We even gave you our space rings, what else do you want?" "That's right, you should settle your grievances with Yin Lesheng yourself, why involve us in this?" Zhongxian also shouted, "We will never help you. Yes, yes, don't treat us as fools." The group of people suddenly clamored and accused him. Yin Lesheng sneered, "Brother Yang doesn't have the guts to fight with me, so just say it. No one will laugh at you, so why beat around the bush?" Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and said, "Brother Yin is the direct disciple of the Eastern Territories Netherworld Sect's sect master. I, Yang Kai, am just a loner, so of course I don't have the guts to fight with you. What if I accidentally kill you? Wouldn't that be a disaster? You don't have the guts to fight with Yin Lesheng. Why should we fight? We won't fight. Yes, we won't fight. If you want to fight, go fight yourself. He really thinks we're idiots. This brat actually wants to drive the wolf to devour the tiger. How laughable." Everyone was extremely dissatisfied with Yang Kai because they had reluctantly handed over their space rings, but now that he wanted them to deal with Yin Lesheng, how could they be happy? All of them were shouting at the same time, filled with indignation. Lan he looked at Yang Kai with a worried expression, fearing that he would make things out of hand. Now that he had used the mountains and rivers bell to threaten everyone, it was already a miracle that he had plundered so many space rings. If he did something excessive, it would likely cause some unnecessary trouble. She secretly winked at Yang Kai, hinting him to stop while he was ahead, lest he go too far. Yang Kai ignored her. With a cold face, he said, "You probably didn't hear what I said at the beginning." "What did he say?" "Kid, why don't you tell me what you're trying to do?" Yang Kai snorted. "This young master said that whoever doesn't hand over their space ring will die." "Yes, you did say that, but we have already handed over our space rings. What else do you want?" Yang Kai said, "Now Yin Lesheng is unwilling to cooperate. This young master wants him dead. Do you have any objections?" Zhonghao said, "Naturally, we have no objections. You and Brother Yin can solve your own grievances, there is no need to involve us." "That's good." Yang Kai grinned and shouted, "This young master is going to ring the mountains and rivers bell now and kill that little bastard Yin Lesheng. If you still want to live, leave this place quickly, this young master will not stop you." "What? You still want to ring it?" "Don't, Brother Yang. Calm down." As soon as these words came out, everyone paled in shock. Yang Kai sneered, "Since you have handed over your space rings, this young master will also keep his word and let you live. This young master only wants to deal with Yin Lesheng now, so if you don't want to die, scram." Zhonghao angrily said, "The situation here is complicated. If we could leave, how could we have been threatened by you before?" "Yang Kai, aren't you lying through your teeth?" Zhongxian also said, "You can't be shameless to this extent." Yang Kai calmly said, "I don't care. If you don't have the ability to leave and are killed by the mountains and rivers bell, then you can only blame your bad luck. It has nothing to do with this young master." Changing the topic, he shouted angrily at Yin Lisheng, "Believe in Yin, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Have a good trip to the Yellow Springs." Saying so, he swung the myriad's sword in his hand towards the mountains and river's bell. Lan, his eyelids twitched when she saw this, and she quickly pushed her source chi to protect herself. Many martial artists also turned pale with fright as they cried out one after another. "Stop it, stop it. Damn it, stop. If you have something to say, we can help you persuade Yin Lisheng. Yes, we can have a good chat with Yin Lisheng and make him hand over his space ring." Amid the chaos, Yang Kai's myriad sword stopped less than an inch away from the mountains and river's bell and looked at everyone. "You want to talk to Yin Lisheng?" Everyone broke out in a cold sweat and nodded their heads repeatedly. Yang Kai said with an embarrassed expression, "Believe in Yin is a proud man and won't give in easily. If it's just a chat, I'm afraid it won't be of much use. Brother Yang, don't worry, if this Believe in Yin doesn't know what's good for him, we will use other methods to talk to him," someone said with a ferocious expression. Yang Kai said, "Oh, that's not good. You have already handed over your space rings. Logically speaking, what happens next has nothing to do with you. This is a grudge between me and Yin Lisheng. How can you be involved in this?" Everyone's faces darkened as they looked at his hypocritical appearance, cursing Yang Kai in their hearts, but no one dared to show it. "Brother Yang, you don't have to mind, this Believe in Yin is so untactful and should be taught a lesson. Young people only understand how high the sky is and how deep the earth is when they encounter some hardship." Yang Kai's eyes lit up when he heard this and said, "What this friend said is right. In that case, I will have to trouble you with this matter. I didn't force you. Haha, this matter is voluntary." As soon as these words fell, the several dozen cultivators turned their heads and looked at Yin Lisheng. Yin Lisheng's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and the two Netherworld sect disciples standing next to him were also pale and confused. For some inexplicable reason, they'd actually stood on the opposite side of everyone, and it simply caught them off guard. "Yin Lisheng, if you know what's good for you, quickly hand over your space ring, otherwise everyone will die here. Yes, if you don't cooperate, don't blame us for being impolite. Quickly hand it over." Everyone seemed to have been implicated because of Yin Lisheng's unwillingness to cooperate, or perhaps because they were unlucky and wanted to see others suffer, so at this moment, their attitude towards Yin Lisheng was not good, and they all shouted at him. Yin Lisheng was so angry that he seemed to be on fire as he said with a sullen face, "You are all elite disciples of your respective sects, the pride of your sects, yet you are willing to be driven by one person. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" With this sentence, many people's expressions darkened and they looked embarrassed. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and said, "Yin Lisheng means that you should silence him so that no one will spread what happened today." Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up, secretly thinking that this was a good idea, and a few people's eyes flashed with fierce light. Yin Lisheng said with a black face, "Yang Kai, you are such a despicable person, this Yin really misjudged you." Yang Kai snorted and said, "When you tried to kill me in the Starlight Corridor, you should have thought of the consequences." Yin Lisheng clenched his teeth and said, "Don't force me, if you push me too far, none of you will have a good end." Yang Kai jumped back and said with a glare, "Oh, I'm so scared." He turned his head to look at the dozens of cultivators and said, "This guy actually dares to threaten you. I don't know if you can tolerate it, but I can't. If I were you, I would rush over and tear him apart." Even though Yang Kai was adding fuel to the fire and sowing discord, everyone was still a little unhappy, feeling that Yin Lisheng's words were too big. Zhong Hao pondered for a while and said, "Brother Yin, a wise man submits to circumstances. I know you have means and trump cards, but do you really think you can be an enemy of so many of us?" "Zhong Hao, you are also forcing me." Yin Lisheng's eyes spat fire and his voice was cold. Both of them were disciples of great sects in the Eastern Territory and had known each other for a long time. Although there was no friendship between them, they were both from the Eastern Territory after all. It was one thing for others to join forces to force him, but even Zhong Hao was doing the same, which made Yin Lisheng extremely uncomfortable. Zhong Hao quickly said, "Brother Yin, it is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. This is the Shattered Star Sea, there are many opportunities." He didn't use divine sense transmission, but openly said these words in front of Yang Kai. Obviously, he also bore a grudge and wanted to find an opportunity to take revenge. Kai Yang curled his lips in disdain, as if he didn't care. Yin Lesheng's face was calm, and after thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "Good, this Yin will remember today's matter. Yang Kai, I will make you pay back 100-fold in the future." Yang Kai chuckled and said, "Brother Yin, you are the meat on the chopping block, and I am the knife. Is it really okay for you to say such harsh words?" Yin Lesheng stared at Yang Kai without saying a word. Yang Kai snorted and said, "Miss Lan He, take their space rings." Lan He nodded, walked over to Yin Lesheng, and stretched out her hand. Yin Lesheng said, "Heavenly Wolf Valley, this Yin will also remember this. I will definitely pay you a visit in the future." Lan He's complexion changed slightly, but at this time, she knew that it was useless to say anything, so she just took the space rings of the 3 Netherworld sect disciples, turned around, and left. After a while, she came to Yang Kai's side and said, "There are a total of 46 space rings here. Brother Yang, please count them." Yang Kai happily took them and said, "Miss Lan He should also pick some." Lan He shook her head and said, "I don't need it, I didn't do anything." Yang Kai was about to say something when his complexion suddenly changed, and his source chi fluctuated violently. Lan He also looked surprised, not knowing what had happened to Yang Kai. Looking around, she saw a black chi appear on Yang Kai's wrist, and this black chi was like a spirit snake, spreading towards Yang Kai's arm. Wherever it passed, Yang Kai's flesh and blood would turn into a bloody mess, revealing his white bones. The corroded parts of his body emitted a sizzling sound that made one's scalp tingle. A fishy smell instantly filled the air. "Azura Earth Demon!" Lan He exclaimed. Chapter 2457. Yang Kai's complexion was ashen as he constantly formed seals with his hands. His source chi surged endlessly, and it took him a lot of effort to stop the black chi. However, looking around, the front right arm had been corroded into a horrible state, dripping with blood. The black chi that had been stopped was like a living creature, struggling and wriggling desperately towards Yang Kai's shoulder. Yang Kai raised his head, glared at Yin Lesheng, and said fiercely, "You dare plot against me?" Yin Lesheng's expression was also sluggish at this moment. The Azura Earth Demon was a secret technique of the Netherworld sect. Only the top and most outstanding disciples of each generation could cultivate it. Moreover, when cultivating it, one had to connect to the real Netherworld purgatory and condense the yin chi of the Netherworld into Earth Demon power. However, once successfully cultivated, the power of this secret technique was infinite, and no one below the Emperor realm could resist it. Yin Lesheng had quietly hidden this wisp of Azura Earth Demon in his space ring, and after Yang Kai took it, he suddenly stimulated the power of this secret technique, and sure enough, Yang Kai was hit. But what shocked Yin Lesheng was that Yang Kai was actually able to stop this Azura Earth Demon. Although he seemed to be seriously injured, none of his vitals were injured, so there was no danger to his life at all. After a moment of shock, Yin Lesheng immediately recovered, and his figure flickered as he pounced towards Yang Kai like a great peng spreading its wings, roaring with a ferocious expression. "This Yin can only seize the moment for revenge. 10 years is too late, Yang Kai, die." At the same time as Yin Lesheng made his move, Zhong Hao and Zhong Xian also attacked together. The source chi of the two surged, and using some kind of secret technique, they merged into one and turned into a stream of light that shot towards Yang Kai. Their momentum was peerless. The others also reacted quickly. They all shouted as they rushed towards Yang Kai. Previously, they were forced to hand over their space rings, so they had long been suppressing their anger. Now that they saw Yang Kai being attacked by Yin Lesheng and seriously injured, they naturally wanted to take this opportunity to take revenge. "Yang Kai, run!" Lan He was startled as she watched the situation change. He hurriedly shouted at Yang Kai. Yang Kai's face was distorted. It was unknown whether it was because of the pain or something else. A hint of madness flashed in his eyes as he said, "You can't escape." He could not see through this natural spirit array at all. Unless he had time to calm down and study it slowly, there was no way he could escape from here. Raising the myriad sword in his hand, Yang Kai slammed it towards the mountains and river's bell and shouted, "You want to take my life? I'll let you all die first." Boom, along with the strike of the myriad sword. A halo of light suddenly swayed out from the mountains and river's bell, and a terrifying sound wave swept out. Everyone's eyelids twitched, and in an instant, they cried for their parents. However, to everyone's surprise, the sound wave didn't spread too far. Instead, it directly exploded. Yang Kai was sent flying with a bang. Ha ha ha. You can forgive the sins of heaven, but you can't live with the sins of your own making. Zhong Hao was overjoyed when he saw this. Although he didn't know why the sound of the mountains and river's bell being struck this time was different from before, this was the best opportunity to kill Yang Kai. He shouted with all his might, "Everyone, let's attack together and let this surnamed Yang die without a burial place." The rest of the people also looked refreshed and rushed forward. Yang Kai's head was dizzy and he couldn't tell north from south. The change of the mountains and river's bell this time was also beyond his expectations. He never expected such a thing to happen. He didn't know if it was the work of the artifact spirit. But at this moment of life and death, the mountains and river's bell suddenly shook slightly on its own. Along with this vibration, the void suddenly collapsed. This natural spirit array that shrouded such a large area of the void collapsed and disappeared in an instant. Looking around, a black hole the size of a house appeared out of thin air. The mountains and river's bell turned into a stream of light and rushed directly into the black hole, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The next moment, the black hole expanded at an extremely fast speed, and at the same time, a huge suction force came from the black hole, pulling in all the cultivators' bodies. What's going on? What's going on? Not good, let's get out of here. The space here is collapsing. Surnamed Yang, you're not human. Everyone shouted and panicked. Even Yin Lesheng, who was determined to kill Yang Kai, had a change of expression at this moment. How could he care about Yang Kai's life and death? He turned around and tried to escape. But the suction force from the black hole behind him was simply too strong. No matter how hard he tried, he could only hover in place, unable to leave at all. As the black hole rapidly expanded, the suction force also became stronger and more terrifying, making every cultivator feel desperate and powerless. Yang Kai and Lan He, who were closest to the black hole, were the first to be sucked in and disappeared. After a while, one cultivator after another screamed miserably and made strange postures as they were swallowed into the black hole in a panic. In less than 10 breaths of time, none of the several dozen cultivator could escape the suction of the black hole and were all swallowed up. And the black hole was still expanding. It wasn't until a certain moment when the black hole seemed to have expanded to a limit that it suddenly shrank towards the center and disappeared in an instant. The void returned to calmness, leaving behind a rich fluctuation of space force, indicating that there had been a change here. In a daze, Yang Kai woke up, and the first thing he heard was Lan He's call. The pain in his arm was still unbearable. It was a pain that touched his soul, as if his soul was about to be torn apart. He vaguely knew what had happened just now, but because he had been blasted by the sound waves of the mountains and river's bell at close range, his mind was shaken and he was not in the mood to investigate the situation around him. He only saw the formation of a black hole and felt a huge suction force pulling him in. Then, he arrived here. If it weren't for a supreme treasure like the soul-warming lotus, that shock alone would have been enough to shatter his soul. As the shouts in his ears became clearer and clearer, Yang Kai shook his head and finally recovered some of his spirit. He turned his head and looked around, but he couldn't see anything at all. There was no light in this place, only chaos and nothingness. A familiar feeling suddenly lingered in his heart. A void corridor. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he exclaimed in surprise. This was clearly the interlayer between the cracks of the void, a passageway in the void. Void corridors existed everywhere in this world, but if one didn't understand the Tao of space, they wouldn't be able to detect them and wouldn't have the opportunity to enter here. Recalling the previous scene, Yang Kai immediately understood that the reason why he had come to this void corridor was because of the mountains and river's bell's sudden eruption, shattering the void with great power. The black hole was the most obvious sign. Suppressing the various discomforts and pains in his body, Yang Kai quickly released his divine sense and found Lan He not far from him. At this moment, Lan He's situation was worrying because she had been entangled by a void current and was trapped inside, unable to move. There were dangers everywhere in this void corridor, but the biggest one was this void current. This void current was similar to a river and was invisible, but it was formed by chaotic space force. Once a person fell into it, it would be very difficult to get out and could only wait to be swallowed up by this void current. Even Yang Kai had to be careful of these void currents when walking in this void corridor. Although Lan His cultivation was high, she didn't understand the Tao of space, so after falling into the void current, she was helpless and could only wait for death. Yang Kai quickly came to her side and called out, "Sister Lan He." Lan He was slightly startled and immediately called out in a low voice, "Yang Kai?" "Yes, it's me," Lan He replied. "I'm entangled by a strange force and can't get away. Don't come close." She was afraid that Yang Kai would follow in her footsteps, so she quickly reminded him. Yang Kai grinned and said, "Don't worry, this is a void current. I'll save you now." Lan He shook her head and said, "No, I've tried. The harder I try, the deeper I sink. It's like a swamp. If you continue to help, it will only backfire. If you have a chance to leave this place in the future, go to Heavenly Wolf Valley in the Eastern Territory and tell them that I, Lan He, have died here." She seemed to feel that she had no hope of surviving and even had to make arrangements for her funeral. Yang Kai remained silent, crouched down, and quietly sensed her. Lan He spoke for a while, but seeing that Yang Kai didn't respond, she said sadly, "Right, take my space ring and give it to my Heavenly Wolf Valley's people." Saying so, she was about to take off her space ring. Yang Kai suddenly stretched out his hand and patted her position. Space force instantly fluctuated, turning into an invisible force that affected the movement of the void current. After a short while, the surging void current was directly smoothed out, and Yang Kai stretched out his hand and pulled Lan He out. How? Lan He seemed to be unable to believe that she had escaped so easily and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. But soon, she reacted and cried out involuntarily, "Are you proficient in the Tao of space?" Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and said, "I know a thing or two." Lan He was surprised, "Are you Master Li Wuyi's disciple?" Li Wuyi again. Yang Kai had heard this name more than once and already knew that he was a famous master in the star boundary. He was a powerful third-order Emperor Realm Master and was proficient in the Tao of space. It was not an exaggeration to say that this person was the strongest master under the 10 great emperors. Yang Kai shook his head and said, "I've heard of him long ago, but I never had the chance to meet him." He was not going to continue talking about this topic and said, "I'll take you to a safer place first. I still need to heal." Hearing this, Lan He recalled that he had been attacked by Yin Lasheng before and hurriedly said, that Azura Earth Demon is a secret technique of the Netherworld sect. Its corrosive power is extremely strong. Under the Emperor realm, anyone who gets hit by it will die without a doubt. "How can you be okay?" Yang Kai chuckled and said, "I was just lucky, or that little brat Yin Lasheng's cultivation isn't good enough." This Azura Earth Demon was indeed terrifying. Yang Kai estimated that if it were any other Tao Source Realm cultivator, they would not be able to escape from it, but his strength was not comparable to an ordinary Tao Source Realm cultivator at all. Whether it was the quality of his physique, source chi, or spiritual energy, they were far beyond the level of a Tao Source Realm cultivator, so he was able to suppress this Azura Earth Demon. Even so, half of his arm was corroded beyond recognition. Chapter 2458. After shuttling through the void corridor with Lan He for a while, Yang Kai suddenly stopped. Lan He didn't know what was going on, but she didn't dare to disturb him rashly and just stood quietly to the side. After a while, Yang Kai said, "It's safe here. The space here is relatively stable. Miss Lan He, please rest here for a while. I need to heal my wounds. Once I've healed, I'll send you out." "Send me out?" Lan He was stunned, but when she remembered how Yang Kai had easily rescued her before, she immediately felt confident in him and nodded, "Good, you don't need to worry about me. It's more important to heal your wounds as soon as possible." The Azura Earth Demon's corrosive power is extremely strong. The longer you delay, the more troublesome it will be. Yang Kai stretched out his hand, circulated his space force, and waved it around her a few times before saying, "I've left a space imprint here. If anything happens, I'll be able to detect it immediately and come over immediately." After saying so, he turned around and flew away. After Yang Kai left, Lan He slowly sat down cross-legged and released her divine sense to investigate the situation around her. She found that, as Yang Kai had said, the space here was relatively stable. Without the strange power she had encountered before, she didn't dare to move and could only wait here. Not far away, Yang Kai also sat down cross-legged, took out a large number of healing pills from his space ring, and stuffed them into his mouth like he was eating beans. His current injuries weren't too serious, and the injuries caused by the mountains and rivers Bell were quickly recovering. The only troublesome thing was the Azura Earth Fiend. This thing was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, tightly wrapped around his arm. Yang Kai had to circulate his source chi to force the Earth Demon's power out of his body. Fortunately, his source chi was vigorous and pure. Even if this secret technique was extremely powerful, it couldn't stop him from expelling it. Time passed little by little. Yang Kai forced the Azura Earth Demon's power out of his body little by little, his expression meticulous and his movements methodical. After about 5 or 6 days, he finally let out a heavy sigh of relief. The Azura Earthly Demon had completely disappeared. Only the corrosive wound on his arm had not completely healed. However, with his strong physique and recovery ability, he was able to recover. However, with his strong physique, this kind of injury was actually nothing. After 5 or 6 days of recovery, the injuries caused by the mountains and rivers Bell had also healed. Yang Kai swung his arm, slowly stood up, and walked towards Lan his location. Not long after, Yang Kai came to Lan his side and found that she was still sitting cross-legged in the same place. The space seal he had set up before also showed no signs of being touched, indicating that this place had been calm for the past few days and had not been affected by the void's power. Sensing Kai Yang's arrival, "Lan He is Brother Yang. There's no problem." Yang Kai replied with a smile. "That's good." Lan He also breathed a sigh of relief. After a pause, she said, "Can we go out now?" Yang Kai said, "Of course, come, I'll send you out." "What about you? You still want to stay?" Yang Kai smiled faintly and said confidently, "I am very familiar with this place. There won't be any danger. I want to find the mountains and rivers Bell. It also entered this void passageway, and I don't know where it is now. So it's like that." Lan He knew that she couldn't persuade him too much. After all, she wasn't very familiar with Yang Kai. "Then I hope Brother Yang's wish will be fulfilled soon." "I'll count on your auspicious words," Yang Kai grinned. "Right." Lan He suddenly remembered something and said, "You said before that you had something to ask of me." After being reminded by her, Yang Kai also remembered something and patted his head. "It's like this, I have a friend. More than a year ago, he set out from the Northern Territory to your Heavenly Wolf Valley." "Brother Yang's friend? Does he want to join my Heavenly Wolf Valley? But why did he set out from the Northern Territory?" Lan He was surprised. If he was a cultivator from the Northern Territory, he should have chosen a sect in the Northern Territory first. There was no reason for him to travel to the Eastern Territory. After all, the distance between the two large territories was extremely far. If he didn't use a space array that could cross territory, he might not be able to get there in several years. "It's a bit complicated, let's talk about it as we go," Yang Kai said as he took Lan He to find the weak point in the space while explaining to her. The friend he was talking about was naturally Ling Yin-chin. When he heard Zhong Hao, the holy son of Brahma Holy Land, mention Heavenly Wolf Valley, Yang Kai felt like he had heard of this sect before, but he couldn't remember when. Later, a thought flashed through his mind and he suddenly remembered. Ling Yin-chin had mentioned Heavenly Wolf Valley in front of him before. Because Ling Yin-chin's dead husband was a disciple of Heavenly Wolf Valley in the Eastern Territory. The two met and fell in love in the solitary void-sealed world and later became husband and wife, but her husband was unfortunately killed in the process of saving her. Ling Yin-chin cherished his memory to this day. The high-grade spirit-purifying array she lent to young Kai at that time was bought by her husband at a high price, and it was also the object of her yearning. Because of this, after the spirit-purifying array was damaged, young Kai put in a lot of effort to ask Sangda to repair it, which led to all the subsequent events. When Ling Yin-chin came out of the solitary void-sealed world, she also brought out her husband's ashes. The last time they parted in the Northern Territory, Ling Yin-chin said that she wanted to send her husband's ashes to Heavenly Wolf Valley so that he could rest in peace. After briefly telling Lan He about Ling Yin-chin and her husband, Lan He also sighed and said, that Sister Ling must be an infatuated woman. If she wasn't infatuated, how could she be willing to go from the Northern Territory to the Eastern Territory just to send her husband's ashes back to the sect? One had to know that not only was the journey long, but it was also full of dangers. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. Big Sister Ling was a very good person, young Kai said solemnly. What was her husband's name? If he was really a disciple of Heavenly Wolf Valley, maybe I've heard of him, Lan He asked. Young Kai shook his head. Big Sister Ling didn't mention this. It doesn't matter. When the time comes, if we can see Big Sister Ling, we can just ask her. Lan He didn't delve into this issue. Young Kai said, Big Sister Ling was infatuated with her husband. I think that even if she sent his ashes back, she probably wouldn't want to leave his side. It's just that Big Sister Ling isn't a disciple of Heavenly Wolf Valley, so Heavenly Wolf Valley may not let her stay for long. This Yang wants to ask Sister Lan, if you can see Big Sister Ling in the future, please take care of her. If she can join Heavenly Wolf Valley and become a disciple, it would be best. If not, please let Big Sister Ling mourn for her husband from time to time to relieve her lovesickness. Since it's Brother Yang's request, there's naturally no problem. Lan He was also a straightforward person and agreed at once. Young Kai was overjoyed. With Sister Lan's words, I can rest assured. Lan He was the great senior sister of Heavenly Wolf Valley. Her status was definitely not comparable to an ordinary disciple. Since she had agreed, she would definitely do it. Although this woman's appearance and figure were average, she had a heroic spirit that was not inferior to men. What's Big Sister Ling's cultivation now? Third Order Dao Source Realm. Although her strength isn't at the top, it's definitely not bad. Young Kai gave a pertinent evaluation. Third Order Dao Source Realm? Lan His eyes lit up when she heard this. She clapped her hands and said, then there's absolutely no problem for her to join our Heavenly Wolf Valley. If she's someone of unknown origin, she may need to be assessed, but since she's someone young Kai mentioned, she can be exempted from the assessment. I'll tell Master when I go back. Thank you very much. Young Kai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although he didn't have much of a friendship with Ling Yin-chin, they had come out of the solitary void-sealed world together. With her cultivation, it wouldn't have been a problem for her to join Iceheart Valley, and Bingyun also wanted her to stay, but she was troubled by love and wanted to go to Heavenly Wolf Valley, so everyone could only let her. If she could join Heavenly Wolf Valley in the future, it would be a good place for her. This way, not only would she have a sect to rely on, but she could also accompany her husband day and night. Young Kai believed Ling Yin-chin wouldn't refuse. While the two were talking, Young Kai suddenly stopped in his tracks, and Lan He also stopped. Young Kai released his divine sense to check the surroundings and said, this is the place. I'll tear space later. Sister Lan He, you can rest assured that there won't be any danger. Good. Lan He nodded and cupped her fists. Brother Yang, you must also be careful. If there is a chance in the future, you must come to my Heavenly Wolf Valley as a guest. Of course, Young Kai replied. After saying so, his expression turned solemn as he stretched out his hand and thrust it into the void in front of him. The force of space surged, and the laws of space fluctuated, causing the void corridor to distort and become unstable. Lan His expression changed slightly as she held her breath, not daring to disturb him in the slightest. Open! Young Kai shouted as his hands suddenly moved to the sides. Under Lan His shocked gaze, the void in front of them was torn apart like a piece of silk, and a crack appeared in it in an instant. And as Young Kai moved, this crack grew bigger and bigger. Lan His eyes trembled as she watched in amazement. Tearing space with one's bare hands was something she had only heard of and had never seen with her own eyes. But now, this scene was clearly presented in front of her eyes, shocking her. From the void crack, Lan He clearly saw the dilapidated scenery of the Shattered Star Sea and immediately understood that they could return to the Shattered Star Sea through this crack. "Let's go," Yang Kai shouted in a low voice. Lan He didn't dare to hesitate. Her figure flickered as she rushed towards the crack. In the blink of an eye, she had reached the other side. When she turned around, the crack had already closed quickly. Yang Kai stood in the void corridor and waved at her with a smile. "Brother Yang, take care," Lan He shouted, but the crack had already closed. She didn't know if Yang Kai had heard her or not. Standing in place for a while, Lan He sighed and looked for a direction to fly towards the depths of the Shattered Star Sea. Although her contact with Yang Kai was short, it was as if a new door had opened in front of her, allowing her to see how powerful a Dao Source Realm cultivator could be. In front of a cultivator in the same realm, the elite disciples of top sects were as insignificant as ants that could be killed with a wave of his hand. She knew that she couldn't cultivate to this extent. If she wanted to become stronger, she could only break through to the Emperor realm. An urgent thought emerged from the depths of her heart. She wanted to break through as soon as possible and obtain more power. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.